you don't get tired of training, right? Because you've already seems to reach all the heights of MMA. You know, you've made a name for yourself. Why continue to do this?
I love it, man. I think it's fun. It's an adventure. You know, we make money doing something we love, of course, but it's not just that. You know, it's an adventure. It's something to. It just keeps us motivated, and I love the sport. I absolutely love the sport. I love doing boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, MMA. It's fascinating for me. Always trying to discover new ways to move forward. But really, it's also a lot of fun. You know, we enjoy having these experiences, this adventure. There's nothing like winning a fight, man, especially winning a big fight. There's just nothing like it. I mean, in terms of thrill or excitement, it's really something special.
Do you still take on beginners? I'm sure you get requests all the time, people coming into the gym. What's your criteria for someone to be able to train with you?
Look, we have all levels. You know, at TriStar Gym, we have like six big basics classes a week in jiu-jitsu, and I think four striking classes a week for basics. So when guys come in, my idea is like anybody who walks in here has got to get really good. And guys who have been training there 2 3 years, they start becoming sparring partners or training partners for the more advanced guys, because we're all about like making the guy good fast. So I have a lot of basics class. I don't teach them anymore. I don't teach the basics class anymore. I have black belts teaching the basics class, or an advanced student, at least a purple belt. And I teach 3 classes a day pretty much. And a lot of times I'm working with the pros twice a day. So I'm really focused on them. But sometimes, you know, you'll have people come in from the, outside. They want to meet me. They want to train with me. But I don't really do privates or anything like that. I just kind of train professional fighters. So when professional fighters come in, they want to do their training camp. I kind of put all my energy and focus on that camp. You know, so it's a lot of hours in the day.
I'm surprised you say that you want to get them to get good really fast. I thought you'd be the type of person to say it's a slow process and you have to take years. Because every time I step into a new fight gym, they always belittle. They ask how old I am. Ever since I was like 20, 21, I'd come into a new boxing gym or something like that and be like, "Oh, you're old. You're late. You need to get like 10 years of experience." And then you see a lot of the successful fighters now. The guys like Alex Pereira didn't really start training that. At the level that he's training at now until he was 25, 26, if I'm not mistaken, below Muhammad. I don't think he started doing MMA until he was 25. And every coach they've always said, I'm too old. I'm too old.
You know, when I say good really fast, I mean like learn. If look, it takes 10 years to get a black belt. Okay, let's say, but it doesn't mean we have to take. Here's the thing: there are different levels of black belt. So you can have two guys training 10 years. They both got their black belt, and one guy's much better than the other. There are levels to black belt. You know, so my thing is like getting good fast, efficiently. Don't waste your time with junk training. I'm a believer in like eliminating everything that's junk. I see people training in the gym and they waste so much time doing all this weird stuff, where really if you go in the gym and you do what works, you could surpass, I would say, 80%, 95% of most people. So if you have a good formula, a good practice room, the group should get really good fast comparatively to most gyms that do a lot of junk training, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if you ever done jiu-jitsu, but like they do like a lot of jiu-jitsu schools, they do these kind of weird warm-ups where they shrimp up and down the mat, and they do all this kind of weird like warm-up routine, which takes about 30 minutes. The class is 1 hour and they spend 30 minutes shrimping up and down the mat doing these weird like animal type exercises or whatever they call it. And it's like, you should have been drilling technique for that 30 minutes. You know, you should have been learning something new in that 30 minutes. And then you're going to go roll for 30 minutes, you know? So I just find so many gyms, they really shoot themselves in the foot with the program.
What type of waste of time are you saying? I've seen Tony Ferguson, first thing that pops up in my head. I've seen some of his training is very unorthodox, stuff that I like. He's doing karate moves. And the one time I trained jiu-jitsu, I've only trained it once, and that was with Nate Diaz in Stockton. And it was a lot of warm-up. We ran around the mats, and then there was like somersaults. I don't know if that's the monkey things you're talking about, but that was like, it was a long warm-up.
Yeah. It's exactly right. They're doing somersaults and stuff. I think that's okay for beginners. Like in my kids' class, I make them do that because they need to know how to hit the ground. They need to know how to do break falls. But after a while, you never need to do that stuff again. You know, if you ask me to do a somersault or a break fall, I know how to do it. It's not complicated. Let's move on to something else. So I really feel like so many gyms, like for instance, but Tony Ferguson was a great example. I think he's a very brilliant guy. He's a very imaginative guy. He has a good creativity. But I saw his trainings later in his career where he was kind of just training for pain. You know, so like early in his career, I think he was very innovative. He had a lot of tricky elbows, and he had a style that was very complex in a good way. You know, he would shuffle during the fight when he fought RDA. He was doing a lot of good stuff that I thought was very creative and effective. Later in his career, I think he was like working with Goggins.
Hmm.
And I think Goggins is a great conditioning coach. I'm sure he's fantastic for motivation. But he was like, I saw clips of him training Tony, and he was kind of like killing Tony, just destroying him like physically, like making him throw up and then get back on the treadmill, then throw up and then do more push-ups, like just pushing him to ridiculous limits. But the thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with his career. He's lost
Yeah.
like 8 fights in a row now.
I think it was 7. It can't be 8.
It's 8. It's 8. I counted it recently. The thing is, it's not his problem. His problem wasn't mental toughness. He's one of the toughest guys you can find, and his problem is not conditioning. He's actually very well conditioned. I think he needed certain solutions, and these are not the solutions. Now, conditioning is important. Mental toughness is important, absolutely. But that's not what Tony Ferguson was lacking. He has an immense amount of mental toughness, and he's already very well conditioned. So I think it's good to have a conditioning coach, but if you make the conditioning coach the head coach, all you're going to be doing is conditioning. You know, if you take the grappling coach and you put him as a head coach, you're going to be doing a lot of grappling. If you take a striking coach and you put him as head coach, you're probably going to be doing a lot of striking. So if all you have is a hammer, you see everything, every problem is a nail, right? That's why you need an MMA coach who kind of like looks at your fighting, sees what went wrong and says, look, this is what we should fix. This is what we can fix with the amount of time we have. And you kind of make an overall smart decision, and then you use whatever resources you have to make it happen. If the fighter needs more condition, okay, call Goggins. If the fighter needs more motivation and mental toughness, call a Goggins in. You know, he could do that really well. But I don't think that was Tony's problem. So that's why I don't think they had success when they were working together, because it wasn't solving the issue at hand.
It seems like you view MMA not like a sport of brutality, not really like war. It seems like you're very analytical, and you see it like a game of chess. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. It's very physical, but it's also very cerebral. There's so many things that can happen in an MMA fight. So if you look at, running, you know, sprinting, the rules are so limited. All you're allowed to do is put one foot in front of the other. I mean, that's it. So it's all about power, explosiveness. There's not much strategy. I know people are going to say, no, there is strategy in sprinting. Yes, there is strategy in sprinting. What I'm saying is that it's far less effective and needed. The more options you have, the more strategy matters. So when I'm running, let's say I'm racing against Usain Bolt, there's not much strategy that's going to make a difference. I'm going to lose every time. Fighting is the complete opposite. Fighting, there's so many possibilities. There's so many moving pieces on the board that a strategy could make a major difference.
What do you think is your greatest accomplishment in your coaching career?
It's hard to say, man. Honestly, well, me and George went undefeated together for like 9 years. So that's like, I think, a streak that might not never ever be repeated. You know, we had probably alhamdulillah, we had a really, really good stretch. We won, I think, almost every single round that he competed in. We had a really, really stellar rise together, you know. So I don't know if that's going to be repeated for a very long time.
9 years. How long was Khabib's undefeated streak?
I'm not sure, but Khabib wasn't champion that long. He won the title against Quinta.
Three defenses, right?
Yeah, I believe. Then he defended it against I can't remember who.
Gaethje,
He beat McGregor,
Poirier,
right? Beat McGregor, then
Gaethje.
Poirier, and then Justin Gaethje. So 4. I would say 4. 1 title victory and then 3 defenses. Yeah. So I would say, you know, that's good. I think George was at I can't remember. I think it was 9 or whatnot. So he won it twice, 2 divisions, and he defended it many more times. I think 9 times.
In a hypothetical fight, and say let's a welterweight. I'm sure you've been asked before. You know what I'm going to go. Do you have Khabib or George St. Pierre?
Ah, man, there's no good answer to that one. It's a really tough one. I think it would be pound for pound. It would be a very tough fight. You know, I could see it as a seesaw battle. You know, George has really more developed kicks, so I'd give him that edge. Khabib is like really robust. He could really take a shot, you know, so nobody's ever really hurt Khabib, you know. It'd just be a 50-50 fight. Honestly, very difficult to call.
That was the perfect diplomatic answer. You don't burn any bridges.
You're going to get me in trouble.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You're going to get me in trouble. The Dagestanis and Canadians are all sharpening up their guns and knives, and like they're all going to kill me now.
That 9-year reign was very interesting. My favorite was George St. Pierre versus Jake Shields. For personal reasons, because I'm good friends with Jake Shields. I want to ask, like, what was the strategy going into that fight? Because before that fight, I think Jake Shields was on a really long undefeated run, and that ended his run.
Jake is one of the most successful athletes to ever do MMA. He's one of the most successful athletes to ever do MMA. It's a shame the UFC didn't take him on earlier because he really dominated the circuit outside of UFC.
Strike
He has
Force.
one of the most epic wins over Dan Henderson, a guy above his weight. He was two division champion. I don't know if you ever saw that fight, but it's one of the most amazing comebacks ever. He was badly hurt in round one against the guys we call uh, uh, the H bomb. You know, and Dan Henderson had a crazy powerful right hand, like an incredibly deadly right hand. He knocked out Fedor with it. He knocked out so many fighters. He knocked out Shogun. He knocked out many champions with that right hand, and he hit Shields with it in round one. It's a really an incredible fight. You have to watch it. But Shields dug his way back to a victory, a unanimous victory, after being like almost put out completely. So Jake Shields said, yeah, no, he's the guy who has a heart of a lion. He was always able to find a way to win. He was one of the most successful welterweights ever.
So what was the strategy going into that fight? How were you analyzing his game?
Both George and him were really good, are very good wrestlers and grapplers. So we wanted to keep Jake standing up. We thought that he had vulnerabilities there. And especially because George has such a well-developed kicking game. George has been doing karate since he's, very, very young. So we thought that, we'd be using our kickboxing against him and kind of like keep him at bay with the wrestling.
Do you ever see these fighters as enemies? I think after McGregor, Habib, MMA became way more. They added a lot more animosity to it. Before it seemed more respectful than anything. Did you see these people as enemies, or just this is my opponent, this is the game plan?
Yeah, like there was definitely a different era. Like when George was champion, he had a lot of respect. He was showing a good example to the youth.
Right.
Everybody was like loving his demeanor, the way he respects everyone before and after the fight. And then you had the Ronda Rousey era where it's like, it's a badass attitude. And then you have, of course, the McGregor era soon after, which is like, you're cocky, you're brash, you beat the guy, you say you're gonna beat the guy, then you do beat the guy. And you tell the guy how everybody, you tell him how weak he is, and he was more narcissistic and in love with himself and whatnot. And it was a completely different era. I remember we were in New York, and George was making his comeback fight, and the crowd at the press conference was booing and hissing a lot of the fighters, and they were super super riled up. And he was like, "Wow, MMA's really changed." I'm like, "Yeah, since you've been gone, because I was still going to the fights. I was still like, I had fighters competing." And I was like, no, things have changed completely. As the champions change, the crowd kind of reflects the type of champion that is reigning at the time. And I was really happy to see Khabib beat McGregor because I was so sick of the whole, just antagonizing everybody every day, bullying people, because the thing is, I don't really mind it personally for me, but I know that when you have a champion like that, I know the kids in school are being bullied. Like, I just know I was bullied growing up. And I can tell you, when you have a champion like a McGregor or a Rousey, all the kids look up to them and they think, oh, I got to behave like that. That's my role model. That's how I got to be if I want to be a successful person. So you have a lot of kids that are for sure being bullied in school. Why? Because they look up at an example like that, So they're going to start talking like him, act like him. And I see it myself because I go in the gym and I see the young kids, they're all acting brash and they're all acting, like who's the superstar of the day.
I'm surprised you got bullied. I didn't expect, that for someone
as a young man, sure, I got bullied a lot. Not as bad as GSP. GSP got bullied way worse than me.
Is that why you started pursuing MMA?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, most martial artists that did it in my era, we did it because we were bullied. We saw Royce Gracie be champion. We're like, this little guy's champion. All the guys who looked like Royce, or comparatively at least, we all wanted to learn martial arts. Like, how can we, like, martial arts is real. This is like definitive proof that martial arts is real. So Royce Gracie was like a big hero to us all, not just because he won that tournament, because he proved that you can beat or defend yourself at least against a bigger person. He could be dominant. So it was just like incredible to us, At a young age, me, George, were very much bullied. Absolutely, 100%.
It seems like that's Sean Strickland's background too. He talks a lot about how his parents and his difficult upbringing, and he seems like he's getting revenge for what happened in his childhood in the ring. So maybe that's a common trend.
Yeah, definitely created a fire in him. You could tell, when he fights, you could tell that he's game. He's game. He has something that's driving him. And I know I've heard him talk about his story here and there, but sometimes a difficult life can lead to a burning fire within. And you just want to rid yourself of this misery. You want to rid yourself of this problem you have. So you're super motivated to resolve it. You know, I'm still to this day super motivated to train and enjoy the training. But I mean, I don't get bullied anymore. I mean, people actually, you know, because I'm online, sometimes people try, believe it or not, still to this day. But I don't have a worry about it now. I do it because I enjoy it. But there was a time I just really wanted to be sure that I won't get bullied again. You know.
Yeah, I believe that. Everyone's going to be susceptible to getting comments on the internet. It doesn't go away no matter how accomplished or whoever you are. But it seems,
I just invite them to the gym. Come
yeah.
on down.
And do
You
they
know,
ever
come on
come?
down. No, not really. Some maybe once in a while, but you know, they don't last long.
But yeah, you seem very calculated, and people were really recommending that I speak to you because you have a background in philosophy. How does philosophy play into MMA?
You know, philosophy, you learn how to be analytical. You know, you learn to ask the right questions. You learn to think, you know, to reduce problems to the smallest possible denominator and try to resolve issues, try to resolve problems. You know, why did one guy fall and one guy not? You know, why did these two guys try the same maneuver and one of them was successful and the other one wasn't? And, you know, it's all about being analytical, breaking things down, trying to figure out going on in there exactly, you know, taking a microscope and putting the sport under the microscope and trying to figure out what's going on.
Do you think that other coaches and other camps apply philosophy? Because I don't. It doesn't seem like they do at all.
Maybe not philosophy per se. Maybe they're not trained in philosophy, but there's a lot of smart people in the sport. You know, a lot of smart people, and I think it's more about asking the right questions and thinking really hard about it. I'm formally trained in logic, but I don't think it's the one perfect way to do it. You know, I think there's a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time and they've seen a lot and what their experience and trial and error in the gym, trying different things, trying different approaches, working with different coaches, they get different ideas and they kind of figure their way around.
You said you're trained in logic. Some people are saying that you have a master's degree in philosophy, but what do you mean trained in logic?
No, well, philosophy is a study of logic. Okay, philosophy literally means the love of wisdom. A lover of wisdom. A philosopher is a lover of wisdom. Okay, that's what it translates to. But when you go to university, they teach you formal logic. What are the rules to logic? What makes something logical or illogical? That's really what philosophy is. Okay, it's a study of epistemology, how we know things. The philosophy of, no, I shouldn't say the science of how we know things. Like for instance, if you I don't know, if you say 1 + 1 = 2, well, what kind of logic are you using there? Well, we say that's an analytical logic. It's true by definition. Okay, so then you have science, you know, like physics. What kind of logic are they using? Well, they're using inductive logic. They're going by trial and error. They're trying to use the empiricism to prove something. So philosophy is really the study of logic, formal logic. What makes something true or false?
Does that conflict with being a deist? I've heard a lot of people
No,
who
no.
are religious, they say that you should not pursue philosophy because it's not something I agree with. They say you shouldn't pursue philosophy because it'll put doubt in your mind. A lot of the leading philosophers, people like Sartre, Nietzsche, these people are like weird sexual deviants and, you know, these existentialists, a lot of them, you know, could push people away.
That's true.
Yeah, well, listen, I'll tell you something. Look, think about this, okay? Philosophy is logic. It's the study of logic. So how could you say the study of logic is haram? I'd have to ask them, okay, why do you think the study of logic is haram? Though they're going to have to give me a logical question, a logical argument. Hence, they're using philosophy. They're going to have to philosophize on why it's haram. Understand? So it's a self-defeating position. You cannot say logic or philosophy is haram. You can't say that. It's completely irrational. It's a self-defeating position. If I ask a Muslim or anybody, what is philosophy? First, they're going to have to define it. So philosophy is the study of logic, okay? To put simply. Okay, so why is the study of logic haram? Well, he's going to have to come up with some rationale. He's going to have to use logic. But he's using something that he's claiming is haram to prove something. Understand? It's inescapable. Logic is inescapable.
Okay.
Now,
The question isn't really whether it's haram. I'm wondering, has it instilled any doubt in your mind, or is the study?
No, quite
faith?
the opposite. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Look, quite the opposite. Philosophy brought me to Islam. Like it made me very confident in Islam. It gave me reassurance in Islam, and it's super like I don't think all Muslims need to be philosophers. No, but we have to have philosophers. So in Islam, we should have architects, we should have engineers, we should have lawyers, we should have doctors, and we should have philosophers. Why shouldn't we have philosophers? You know, Islam was very famous for their philosophy. Once upon a time, in the golden age of Islam, when Islam was very successful, we had many philosophers. Now, I studied Greek philosophy, I studied Muslim philosophy, and I studied British empiricism, or the Enlightenment period mostly. So the European philosophers. I studied those three eras, and I can tell you the Muslims were highly influential, highly developed, highly rational. And I'm a big follower of Ghazali. You know, I find Ghazali to be incredibly inspiring.
Man.
Now, did it create rifts and
of
feuds?
blessings.
Yes.
Jannah.
Okay, but you'd be surprised how open-minded thinkers like Ghazali were at the time. Okay, so it's quite a complex history, but they were incredibly profound, and in my opinion, thinkers like Ghazali really truly understand what the Quran is saying, because the Quran is making logical claims over and over again. And the Quran actually criticizes those who don't use reason. The Quran tells you, look, if you ask them why they believe what they believe, they're going to say, we just believe because our fathers believe that. They told us to believe it. Now, when you ask Muslims, they say, no, don't think, don't use reason, just believe. No, wait a second. The Quran is actually telling you the pagans only believe what they believe because their fathers told them. They're following tradition. They're not using logic. They're not using rationale. And I was actually quite amazed at how impressive the Muslim thinkers were and the conclusions that they came down to, you know. And one of the most profound conclusions that they came to, the Muslim philosophers, was a lot of critique towards Christianity. You know, the Christians, of course, critiqued Islam, and the Muslims critiqued Christianity. And I found that, probably, we're always going to have a dialogue. We're supposed to have dialogues in a good way, in a positive way, never negative, never, you know, we don't need to have animosity with one another. But why do they believe Christ is God? Why do they believe he died for your sins? Now, there's a very profound points the Quran is making that I think a lot of the Muslims today just don't understand. Why? Because they didn't study logic and philosophy, and then they didn't. Here's the thing: if the Quran was, let's say, the Quran was talking about the heart and how the heart sends blood in the circulatory system, you might go ask a doctor, "Hey, can you read these verses and make some kind of logical connection between what you've learned in science in the circulatory system and what the Quran is saying?" And you might find there's a parallel. Like, for instance, the Quran talks about mountains. Okay, you speak to a geologist, and the geologist is going to say, well, it does actually, the mountain does have a root, and it does stop the tectonic plates from shifting, etc. So you will go to an expert in geology and ask him about what the Quran is saying when it's referring to mountains. But when the Quran is making a logical argument, why don't you ask a logician, somebody who studied and formally trained in logic? Why not make the same parallel? You know, so I think logic is very important, because the Quran is over and over again making logical arguments that I find is understood by the Muslims, but it's not as understood as well as people who formally study logic. Like, I'll give you a for instance, okay? The Christians say that Jesus died on the cross for your sins.
It doesn't.
The Quran says people who say that, they don't know. They're just guessing. They're just people who are guessing, okay? There are people who are like they're super full of doubts. They're not sure. They're so unsure. They're just kind of like, they're just following what's on the bandwagon, what people said. They're trying to put a piece of puzzle together, and they can't make heads or tails of it. That's what the Quran is basically trying to tell you. They don't have any certainty about what happened in the past. Now, if you look at JFK died less than 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, whatever it was. We had CIA, FBI, recorded video, secret agents. We have every type of possible entity there, and we still don't know exactly what happened to him. We don't know if he was shot from the front, shot from the back, how many bullets were fired. There's still a lot of mystery. Yet we have all the great minds of the world looking at the same footage, studying the same event that happened in broad daylight with thousands of witnesses filmed on camera. We still can't figure out exactly how this man was killed. Who shot him? What was the exact? Some people think he was shot from behind. Well, some people believe he was shot by Leo Harvey Oswald. Some people say no, he was shot by past the grassy knoll by the fence. There must have been a bullet coming towards him, not only from the back, etc. There's a major controversy, and that's something that happened in broad daylight to a man surrounded by thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Imagine now, you're trying to tell me, the Quran is saying, look, do you think you know what happened 2,000 years ago to somebody 2,000 years ago, and the witnesses were not even there? Like, you don't even have the witnesses, because, the Gospels They're anonymous. We don't know who wrote Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Those were names that were attributed later on. Okay, they're anonymous sources. Their scholars, their Christian scholars, say there was about 50 other gospels. Think about that. There's 50 other claims to what happened. These are not eyewitness claims. This is something that happened 2,000 years ago. You think by reading these anonymous books, you can piece the pie together, and you could be so sure that this event happened, because in Christianity it says, Paul says, if Jesus didn't die and wasn't resurrected, your faith is in vain. If this event didn't happen exactly like so, Christianity is in vain. You understand? It's writing on this historical event. Now, if you listen to the Quran, the Quran is saying, look, it's telling the Prophet ﷺ, you don't know what happened to Noah. We're informing you. The Quran is informing you. You didn't deduce it. You didn't go and play Sherlock Holmes and figure it out. This is news we're giving to you. This is revelation. You understand? Now, because it's revelation, you're taking it upon faith. Yeah, so Ghazali would tell you, look, we accept what the Quran is saying because there's nothing that's contradicting the Quran. Okay, we accept it. It's revelation. The Prophet passed the test. But there are things that we can verify in the Quran for ourselves, the most important things. And Ghazali's point is that Islam is it's a natural religion and a revealed religion. This is a very important point I think Ghazali is making. A very important. Ibn Tufayl made this point heavily as well. Another Muslim thinker. Islam is you're born upon the fitrah. Okay, every human being is born upon the fitrah. The Quran critiques the Christian and the Jews. It says to the Christian and the Jews, tells us actually to tell them Abraham was upon the faith before the scripture, because the Bible is the story of Abraham. So Abraham didn't have the Bible. If you read the Bible after Genesis, you're reading the story of Abraham. How could Abraham have the story of Abraham? He didn't have scripture, Abraham. What was he upon? He was upon the fitrah. Understand? The Bible, the Old Testament, is about Abraham. So Abraham didn't have a scripture. But yet he's already guided. So he didn't believe in the resurrection, the death and resurrection, etc. He didn't have to believe in that. But yet he was good with God. He was a pious man. He was a saved man. What was he upon? Well, he was upon the fitrah. So the Quran is here to remind you of a religion you were born in. The Quran is making this very strong point that you already know God. God is an innate idea. You're already known. The Quran actually says that before you're born in this world, all of humanity gave shahada to God. God asks, who's your one and only true God? And we all gave the shahada, you're the one and only true God. And then, that's pre-existence, don't forget. Then we're born into this world. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, look, every child is born upon the fitrah, Muslim, even though Islam didn't exist. Because Islam doesn't mean you believe in the Quran. Islam means you're upon the fitrah.
Can you describe what fitrah means for the ones that don't know?
Yeah, fitrah it's a difficult thing, but it's basically
like the natural state. The natural state of
it's your natural innate religion. It's an innate religion. Okay, so look, I'm gonna show you. Okay, so everything you ever learned in your entire life, we had to point to it. Okay, so for instance, when you learned the color red, I had to show you the color red. Somebody had to show you the color red and say, that's the color red. And you had an experience of the color red. Then you saw a cat and we said, that's a cat. We associated the word cat to that animal. Everything that's in your head, you once saw it in your senses. Okay, this is like basic philosophy. We all philosophers in the world, we agree on this. Okay, so for instance, if you were born blind, let's say SNEAKO, you were born blind, you would know nothing about the color red. No matter how intelligent you are, if Einstein was born blind, we could talk to him about the color red till we're blue in the face. Guess what? He'll never understand what the color red is. He has to see red to understand red. You understand what I'm trying to say? You follow? If you never tasted chocolate, can you know what the taste of chocolate is? No, you'd have to taste chocolate. Now you know what chocolate is. Now you can remember it. Everything that you have in your head, you have to see in your senses. You have to have in your senses. Everything. I'm going to tell you, okay, I want you to imagine in your mind a piece of chocolate. You can?
Yes.
Can you imagine? Okay. I want you to imagine a red bicycle. Can you imagine a red bicycle?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now I want you to imagine, I don't know, a cloud.
I can.
Yeah.
No problem, right? That's easy. How about a yellow cloud?
I can picture it. Yeah.
Okay. But yellow clouds don't exist, correct?
Yeah.
They don't.
They don't. But you took your idea of cloud and you took your idea of yellow. Once upon a time, you saw a yellow flower or a yellow crayon or something. You saw yellow, you saw a cloud. Now in your mind, you can mix them up. Right? So in your mind, you can make a concoction. You can make up something. You can make up Santa Claus. But Santa Claus is made up of things that are real. So reindeer exist, men exist, sleighs exist, flight exists. How do you know flight exists? You saw a bird flying. Okay, flight exists. Everything that's in your head, you saw with the senses. So look, you're wearing a jean jacket, right? Mm-hmm. If I asked you to picture, I don't know, a cloud that's made of jean jacket, you could picture it. Doesn't exist. But you could picture it because you saw a jean, you saw a cloud. Now in your mind, only in your mind, you can make a picture of it. You can mix things around in your mind, right? Mm-hmm. You could think of gold. You can think of mountain. And in your mind, you can make a golden mountain. But in your mind, it's just an imagination, right? It's only imagination. But gold exists. The parts that make up a golden mountain exists. Okay, this is what David Hume, he used the example of a golden mountain. You saw gold, you saw a mountain, and then in your mind, you could picture a golden mountain. But golden mountains don't exist in the world, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
But everything you can imagine in your mind, imagine any wild thing, any wild creature, imagine the spaghetti monster, imagine any crazy idea in your head. It's all a collage. It's all a mixture of things you've experienced. So if you never saw the color yellow, imagine you never saw the color yellow. You could never picture a yellow rose. If all you ever saw was a red rose, a blue rose, a pink rose, you would never come up with the idea of yellow. Never. You have to experience yellow. You have to see yellow. Then you could imagine yellow. You understand? This is a very important point. Like I'm not trying to say anything yet. Okay, just try to follow what I'm saying. Everything that's in your head was once in your senses. You either saw it, smelt it, tasted it, heard it, or touched it. Mm-hmm. Those are your senses. You have 5 senses. So if you never touched sandpaper, you don't know what sandpaper feels like. Once you touch sandpaper, you're like, oh, I have the idea of rough, something rough. And now you can imagine a rough cloud. Okay, today we use the example of cloud. I can imagine a rough cloud made of sandpaper, even though they don't exist. This is a very important point. Okay, so we're starting to understand that everything we have in our heads, we once experienced. If I didn't experience it, I don't have it in my head. Just like the blind man who never saw the color red, he cannot imagine a red cloud. He cannot. He never seen a cloud. He never seen the color red. You could talk to him all day about the color red. He cannot deduce logically what the color red is.
Okay? He can't imagine though.
Let me contrast that with this idea. Okay, I want you to imagine in your mind. First, I asked you to imagine a yellow cloud, and you were able to do it. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to ask you to imagine in your mind a kopie.
A what?
A kopie.
A kopie?
Yeah. Imagine that in your mind.
What is that?
Nothing comes to mind. Am I right?
Yeah, nothing.
You're blank, right?
We don't know.
You're blank. Am I right?
I thought of like, nothing. I thought of Colorado and then pi 3.14.
No, I'm not talking about that. That has nothing to do with it.
Okay. It's just a made up word.
So it's a made up word.
Okay.
There's nothing to associate it with. Because I can't point to anything in the world and say, look, that's a kopie. When I taught you, when you learned the word cloud, you saw, that's a cloud. Mm-hmm. When you saw the sun, somebody said, look, that's the sun. That's yellow. That's orange. That's a cat. That's a mouse. That's a desk. That's a TV. That's a pencil. We have to point to it. Right? Everything in the universe that I talked to you about, I have to show you an instance of it. Except one thing. When I say Allah, when I say God, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You don't say, oh, what do you mean? What is this? I don't know what you're talking about. That's why I personally say there's no such thing as an atheist. In the Quran, calls them kafir. Kafir is, they covered. What did they cover? Kafir doesn't mean, they translate it as infidel. Infidel is not a correct translation. It's not a correct. It's an incorrect translation. It's a convenient translation, but it's a very shallow one. It's not a derogatory term. It's not an insult. Kafir means just like, oh, that person, he covered it. Covered what? Is belief in God. Okay, so in every heart, every human heart, which also heart means mind, we have this, we're born with this belief of God. Before you knew anything about red, yellow, clouds, mountains, gold. You already know about God. You were born in the fitrah. When I talk to you about Allah, you already understand about Allah. I don't have to go and point to something and show you a picture of God. That's why we don't paint pictures of God. Because look what the Greeks did. The Greeks said they saw lightning. Lightning was really amazing. They said, oh, you know what? God, lightning, put the two together. I imagine Zeus. Just like you took the color yellow, you took a cloud, and you made up something that doesn't exist. In your mind, you can make things up that don't exist.
Okay? Great teacher,
but every ingredient does exist.
He's a great teacher.
So when I look at the cloud, I see, look, there's a white cloud or a gray cloud. Those exist out there in the world. When I think of a yellow cloud in my mind, I have to remember, oh, wait a second, yellow clouds, they don't exist. That's something that I took from seeing a yellow flower and this cloud, and I mixed it together in my mind. And the Quran is telling you the same thing. The Quran is telling you, when God creates Adam, he says, look, I taught you all the names of everything. Adam, when he's in the Quran, he's saying, God taught him the names of everything. Okay, like I just showed you, when you were born, we had to teach you the name of everything. We had to show you, look, this is a cat. This is a dog. We took the sound dog, and we said, look, that when I say the sound dog, I mean this thing here over here. And then you saw enough instances of dogs, you realize, okay, the sound dog means something with furry, with four legs, and it barks. Okay, that's what they mean when they say the word dog. If I show you a red octagon, a flat red octagon, what does it mean to you?
A flat red octagon, what does that mean?
It means stop, right? You stop the car.
Sign.
Stop sign. Stop sign, right? But we had to teach you, look, a red octagon means stop. That's what we want. We associated red flat octagons. We associated S with the sound S and T with the sound T. We made it all up. We had to teach it to you. There's nothing about a red octagon that means stop. If I show you a Chinese character, there's no way to deduce what it means. Somebody has to tell you what it means. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is, everything in the world we had to teach you except one thing. You already know, Allah. When I talk to you about Allah, it strikes a nerve and it strikes a chord within you. That's why the Quran says, the believers, when they hear the Quran, they believe. They heard it. I'm talking to you about something you already know. Nobody had to. That's what Ghazali says. You don't have to be the world's most logical human being. You don't have to have an IQ of 170 to understand Allah. Understand? You don't have to be. You don't have to do some kind of research experiment. It's not something. Everybody knows God. You understand? So basically, we say this world is a test, yeah. But God gave you a test, but He also put you on the correct answer. That's why we say God is the most gracious, most merciful. Because I gave you a test, and the test you start on the right answer. You can get the answer wrong, but you started with the right answer. So think about this, okay? Everything you ever have in your head, we had to teach it to you, except one thing. I never told you about Allah and I pointed to something, a picture. I never talked to you about Allah and I showed you a man with a beard. No, I took a picture of a man with a beard and I mixed it with this idea that already exists within me. What's the most arrogant thing to do is to take a picture of yourself and mix it with the idea of God. Mm-hmm. When you go to Japan, Jesus is Japanese. When you go to Africa, he's African. When you go to China, he's Chinese. When you go to India, he's Indian. Mm-hmm. When you go to America, he's white.
There's a lot of people that get really upset when you say Jesus wasn't white.
Weird.
Or isn't white. He's still... They get very angry. And it's just, like the whole idea is ridiculous because they say white is European, but this guy wasn't European. He was... Like, we know where he was from. We know where he's born.
He's Palestinian.
Yeah. Well...
Come on, he's Palestinian.
Are you Palestinian?
He was Palestinian. No, I'm Lebanese.
You're Lebanese, okay.
I'm Lebanese, which is very similar.
I went there. I went to Beirut.
The...
I went a couple months ago. Really? Great place. Yeah, I like Lebanese people quite a bit.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Very mixed. Very mixed place. There's a lot of Christians, a lot of Jews. There's Druze there. A lot of Muslims.
Yeah.
Very diverse.
Yeah, we're a diverse set of people for sure.
Why do you say?
I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, why were you saying Jesus is Palestine? Because that's also controversial. People said the land at the time wasn't Palestine. That it was. He's from Nazareth, which was.
Well, he's from that region. He's from that region, right? Mm-hmm. He's from that region. He's a Middle Easterner. So he looked like me. He had my skin color. He had our genetics. I'm from the same genetics. Okay, because don't forget, genetics doesn't there's no such thing as, I don't want to get too deep in this, but genetics, it just tells you what region you're from. There's no real thing as a race, okay? A race is just like, where did your genetics hail from in terms of region? But that's another topic for another day. But basically, he's from the Middle Eastern region, Jesus. There's no debate on this. He was probably very similar to my skin color. So, but like I was saying, I mean, the Quran also gives this example of understanding God, okay? So think about this, okay? When you were in your mother's womb, you didn't know SNEAKO. SNEAKO didn't exist. The name SNEAKO didn't exist. We had to teach you the name SNEAKO, right? When you were in your mother's womb, you didn't know the dunya. You didn't know yellow, green, tasty, sweet, sugar, bitter. You didn't know what it's like to stub your toe. You didn't know any of this. You didn't even know you exist. You had no ego. You know, even psychology, they say the ego forms a little bit before the age of 1. The ego means there's me and then there's the world. I'm separate from the world. There's people out there and there's me. You start realizing there's a person called me. Okay, there's this thing, me. The formation of the ego, when the baby comes out, the baby doesn't even have ego. But what does the baby have? The baby has this innate, this point of awareness, a oneness, a fitra, just a pure, perfect fitra.
Some people disagree. I mean, Christians believe that we're born with original sin, that we're born sinners, and we need to be forgiven and baptized for sins that we did not commit.
Right. So if I commit a crime, why shouldn't they arrest my wife and my kids? Would they do that? Is that fair?
Well,
if I commit a crime, should they go arrest my brother?
No.
Is that Christian justice?
That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
Because
why not?
It's not your sin.
Weird.
Yeah, but why? Well, then why am I punished for Adam's sin? That's what I like to ask them. I would say, look, if Adam created a sin, Adam and Eve created a sin, alayhi salam, why are we in trouble for that?
I guess the answer is it's the difference between human nature and law. Maybe you can't apply legal moral ideas to human nature.
Explain. I mean, okay, are you saying that I'm gonna sin one day? Okay, that's possible. But if a newborn baby is born, is he born with a sin? He doesn't even know he exists. He doesn't even know his name. He doesn't know how to move his finger. What is he born with? Is he born clean slate, or is he a sin?
I believe clean slate. I've never looked at a baby and thought that's a sinner. Like he needs to be. I've never seen a baby and thought he needs to be forgiven for stuff he didn't do. I think everyone can look at a baby and like the way they smile, they have a purity in their face where they're not. Eventually, when people have evil thoughts and do evil actions, it wears down on their face and you can see it. And they become a different. Like their appearance is different. You can see it. A baby, you look at it and you can see purity. That's something that's indisputable. It's hard to argue that, but that's why I've never believed in original sin.
I agree with you. But I understand some Christians, they say, no, the sin is passed down and it's inherent, so it's in our DNA. But I would say, doesn't that make God unjust?
Obviously.
If let's say my son does something wrong, should I punish his little brother?
No.
That's what I ask Christians. Should I punish his little brother? Should I punish his little sister? Should I punish the neighbor? They had nothing to do with it. That's why I ask Christians, how could we say that there's original sin? Because that would mean I would make sense for me to punish all my children for one of my children's transgressions. And if you read the Old Testament says, one person won't take the sin of another. So there's a type of inconsistency there. So a new narrative was born after when the Jesus Christ story happened. And they were trying to explain why. Because a lot of people say, look, they were just trying to explain why somebody so good would have something so bad happen to him. So if you look at the Jesus Christ story, he's this, they depict him as this sinless man, perfect man, God man. And then they say, look, the worst thing happened to the best person. Why would that? Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, we say, oh, it's a fitna. That's our explanation. It's a fitna. It's a trial. It's going to show your true colors. Are you only happy and joyous and patient and loving when things are good? Or when things are bad, you're still loyal, loving, worshiping God, etc.? Well, we won't know until we test you, right? Okay, that's the Muslim paradigm. In the Christian paradigm, it's because, well, that happened to Jesus because all of you sinned. You're all bad. You're all evil. You're all. This happened because of the whole human, all of humanity, basically. So that's how they try to explain it.
I've realized that there's a lot of Christians get really. I'm seeing it in the chat now too. Someone said, "This is pissing me off. Christ is king." I've come to the realization there's so many. I've trying to relax on this because it just like it creates a lot of division and people get angry and people like having. I think people like to have faith and it blends into blind faith where they like to believe without going into the logic or going to the philosophy behind it. When they start to hear this conversation, there's a blockade and they don't want to transcend that level of logic. So I've seen it. That's why I've even dialed back my language. I'll try not to say Allah, I'll say God, so that they think it's the same. They don't get confused. They don't get angry.
Right, but the Christian Arabs say Allah.
I know. So alhamdulillah too.
So it's just an Arabic word for God.
They don't. Most people don't know that. They still don't know that.
Right.
Like even some of my close friends, for example. Actually, I just when I brought Aiden Ross to the mosque, he's like, "You guys don't believe in God. You believe in Allah, right?" I'm like, "Wait, you didn't know?" People they don't think that we believe in God. They think that Allah is like a different entity. Is like a Muslim guy. Is like a. I think they picture like a guy in the Taliban. That's God.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions. But look, I always like I dialogue with Christians. If they're open-minded, I continue. If they're not open-minded, I just close the door and I let them be. Because not everybody wants to dialogue. Not everybody wants to examine their beliefs. But the door is there. You know, we're in the age of the internet now. If you want to examine your beliefs, if you want to do your research, the door is open. I mean, there's no limitations now to learning, access to information. So, you know, I like to dialogue with people who are open-minded, and I like to listen, and I like to think about things. I like to listen to their arguments as well. But we have a back and forth, and as long as it's friendly and done in the right way, because I think religion should always be friendly and done in a correct way. Like I saw your video with Shmuley, and I find like Shmuley, I wouldn't be able to talk to him for more than 1 second. Why? Because he right away starts with insults, propaganda, ad hominems. Like he's a bad example of religion. Like he's wearing the kippah and all that. Look, I think there's bad examples in every religion, okay? But he's such a vile version. And I have a lot of Jewish friends that are good, honest people. You could sit down with them, have a rational discussion. There's good and bad in every religion, okay? But he's such a bad example.
I told him,
in my opinion,
I told him that I feel bad for Jews because he's the worst representation of Jews that could possibly
the
exist.
worst.
He like embodies all the anti-Semitic stereotypes in one. Even though you're an actual Semite, that word anti-Semitic gets thrown around for Polish people. Regardless,
I'm more Jewish than him, by the way. I'm more Jewish than him. I'm more Semitic than he is.
Yeah.
I believe in the afterlife. You know, he doesn't believe in the afterlife. He did a debate with Hitchens where he was like, "Oh, the afterlife is just basically how your kids remember you." What are you talking about, man? If you read Maimonides, the greatest Jewish thinker, it's a prerequisite. If you have to believe in the resurrection, if you don't, you're not a Jew, according to Maimonides. Now, Maimonides, okay, you don't have to agree with him. You could say, "Oh, we don't agree with him." Fine. But he's the guy who defined what a Jew is. He's the greatest thinker in Jewish history. Are you really that Jewish? Well, I would tell you Maimonides thinks I'm more Jewish than you. I believe in all your prophets. I believe in the resurrection. I believe in God. I believe the next life is literal. And you're here saying to Hitchens, "Oh, well, maybe the afterlife is just how your kids remember you," kind of thing. You know, it's just like a capitulation, a complete capitulation. He threw out the Torah basically. Like he's such a bad example. And somebody explained to me how on earth he's sitting his granddaughter down and touching her in a way that's completely like absurd, abhorrent. And nobody criticizes him for it. Nobody's putting cuffs on this guy. Nobody's reviewing what the hell. Like somebody explained that he's touching her in her chest region. He's caressing her. What? How insane is that? How does he get away with it? Like
he's a rabbi. It's not even like he's a religious leader. You're acting like he's just like a random Jew who's become an Israeli apologist. He's a spokesperson and a leader in the community. And he sells dildos with his daughter. I called him out on this. I'm wondering, what did you think of that debate? Because it was pretty impromptu, and I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't want it.
I think I listened to it maybe, like my fans were asking me to listen to it, so I turned it on for a few minutes. But It's just pure shmooly. Like this guy stepped in, he's like, "Oh, you want to attack me?" And he starts making a huge debate. Like, okay, dude. First of all, SNEAKO doesn't need protection. First of all, you probably slap him and knock him out with one slap. But like he's like, "Oh, you need this guy to protect you now? Oh, wow, you guys want to threaten me now? This is all like it's just like he's the Don King of like just like promoting the most vile aspect of human dialogue. Like the best, like if you bought two religious people from two different faiths and they really believe in God, I think they're gonna have a humble dialogue. They're gonna think about right and wrong, morality. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not lie. Like, how could you speak in that way and think, oh, I know I believe in God, I represent God here? Because the thing is, people say the Jews are the chosen people. Yeah, they were chosen to be a light upon the world. What's a light upon the world? To teach morality to the world. I took ancient Judaism. Like I studied in university. They were supposed to be a light onto the world. That's their mission. What does it mean, a light onto the world? Teach people, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, be humble. Like, they were supposed to be a good example. Shmuly's not doing that. Shmuly's propagating, arguing, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's being always attacked by these anti-Semites, which is like absurd. They'll call you anti-Semite, but they won't call you a liar. Where did I lie? Where did I go wrong factually? No, you're an anti-Semite. No, wait a second. Why am I an anti-Semite? If I get attacked by a Chinese guy and I defend myself, am I anti-Chinese? Am I anti-Asian? Am I racist of some sort? If a bad guy attacks me and I defend myself, am I racist? Where is it that we're factually wrong? Where is the argument breakdown? He never brings that up. He's always just constantly talking about. I mean, we'd have to bring it up. I didn't memorize the dialogue, but I just remember it's pure shmooly all the time. I'm the victim here. I'm being attacked. Look he's just like, he thinks we're so dumb that it's convincing. He thinks he can convince us with such stupid arguments. It's wild. Actually, I wouldn't mind. I don't know if you know how to play it right now. It'd be funny to kind of listen to it because
you want to?
His arguments are always ad hominem. You're evil, you're bad, and that's why you're against me. He's never actually debating any points.
Yeah, I can bring it up here. But I think it's very funny because I could show it here. You sent me one of his videos earlier. What was I didn't get the chance to see it yet.
Oh, you should play that video if you have it.
I can play it right now.
Where he praises Islam, basically. He loves Islam.
Really?
He's going to say something. Yeah, he says something about Islam that most people don't know about. We could talk a little bit about the history of Islam. I think people might find it interesting.
Okay, we'll see some of it. I've played it on stream before. I think there might be a little, but yeah, he goes in. Let's go from here. Do you find it difficult to speak about these subjects in the MMA world? Do you get pushback? Do you get called racist, anti-Semitic?
No. I don't. I only talk about people. I only talk about things that people ask me about. Like I won't bring it up if people are not like, if we're in an MMA settings and we're talking fighting, I'm not going to bring up religion. We're talking about fighting, but I have a channel where we talk about fitness, MMA, boxing, jiu-jitsu, and then it's Ask Me Anything. So people often ask me about religion and logic and philosophy because that's what I studied.
Yeah, actually, I kind of don't want to hear his voice. It's very unpleasant.
Yeah, and you're up against customer. By the way, he has the friends and family discount, everybody. Let me tell you something.
You call me disgusting. You sell dildos with your daughter.
Let me tell you something.
You sell dildos with your daughter.
No, sir.
I saw you dance on a child at a wedding.
No, sir.
You twerk on children.
What you believe
you have a mom and pop shop with your daughter.
Murderers, killers.
Do I? When did I say that?
You said we did 9/11.
I said Israel.
Okay, yeah. I don't really want to hear his voice, to be honest with you.
All right, no problem.
Several times.
Play if you can't play that clip I sent you.
Let's see this one.
It's an interesting one.
Okay. This is a debate.
And I'm amazed Muslims don't bring this up. Like they don't drive this point home. I mean,
is George St. Pierre, is he Christian?
He's kind of. I don't like to talk about his personal faith because he likes to keep it private.
Yeah.
But he's a searcher. Let's just say.
Okay.
Did Shalom on
the. He looks very coherent. I think I have seen this before. He seems very coherent compared to how he was in the debate.
Did Shalom on the home.
How do you regard the breakdown of communities? And for example, how do you regard Islam in the Muslim world nowadays? It's being very negatively stereotyped.
Well, look, I'm actually, interestingly enough, as an
I don't know how
Orthodox
to
Jew, a
work
great
this
champion
word,
of
so I couldn't
Islam.
bring it up myself.
Can you hear it?
No, I don't hear anything.
There's a share screen. If you see on the icon, it says, I think you need to allow it.
Oh, where's that?
I think they're able to hear it, but it's a short video. I'll play it for them because they can hear.
The fact is that the Jewish community has a real debt to the Islamic community, because when we were kicked out of Catholic Spain in 1492, when we were kicked out of Catholic Portugal, I think in 1503, it was the Muslims who took the Jews in. That's why there are Jewish communities in the Islamic world till this very day. The Islamic community, the Jewish community of Istanbul, dates from then. It was specifically countries not beyond the Ottoman Empire where Jews were tolerated. And they were welcomed in, and they paid a jizya. There was a poll tax they paid, but they were never persecuted, and there wasn't a Holocaust in the Islam.
So he admits that there was no Holocaust, and that Muslims and Jews were able to coexist, and that Muslims even defended and took in the Jews.
We are not anti-Semitic. Look, Islam saved the Jews. Islam saved Jewry. You know, that's their quote from David Wasserstein. David Wasserstein, he teaches Jewish studies. He said, look, if it wasn't for Muslim conquest, it's very likely Judaism wouldn't exist, okay? Because you had the Romans, you had the Persians. They didn't allow mingling of Jewish people. They suppressed Jewish people. When Islam took over those two empires, the Jewish people can now live freely as dhimmis, okay? Protected people. A dhimmi is a protected person. Now, Jewish people flourished. Every time Islam flourished, David Wasserstein says, Judaism flourished. They coincided. The golden age of Islam was the golden age of Judaism. The Jews did well under Islam. They survived and they thrived. Under Christianity, they were being eradicated. What is Shmuley saying? He's saying, look, the Muslims from Catholic Spain, they rescued the Jews. The Ottomans rescued the Jews. How can we be anti-Semitic? It's impossible. First of all, we can marry Jewish women. How are you going to be anti-Semitic? Your in-laws and your wife is going to be Jewish. It's an absurdity. And there's Shmuley in that video admitting that not only did the Muslims rescue the Jews, there was never a Holocaust in the Jewish world. In the Muslim world. The friction that started between Muslims and Jews was the start of Israel. Because the Muslims were like, hey, you guys don't want to use the Europeans to attack us? Because don't forget, the Europeans were trying to eradicate the Jews. We rescued them. They lived under Muslim rule for hundreds and hundreds of years, nearly 1,000 years. Okay. Then in modern era, last 100 years, they flipped on us. They sided with the Europeans to fight us. But for 800 years, they were living under our rule, protected from Europe. It's the Europeans that wanted to eradicate them. It's the Christians that wanted to eradicate them. You had Catholic Spain. Okay, Catholic Spain wanted to literally murder. It's called the Spanish Inquisition. Look it up. Okay, they wanted to murder every single Jew. The founder of the Protestant religion, Martin Luther, read what he says about the Jews. He says, look, we tried to convert them. They don't want to convert. You have to eradicate every one of them. Burn everything they built. If you can't burn it, bury everything they built. Get rid of every single one of them. Why? The Christians say that they're responsible for the death of Christ. If you read the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew is saying, the blood is on your hands and your children. The blood of who? The blood of Christ. The blood of Jesus Christ is on. I don't believe this. You don't believe this. We don't believe this. Okay? The Christians at the time interpreted it as they're the ones who killed Jesus Christ. All of them. Not one of them. Not the group at that time. All of them. Because it says the blood is on your hands and your children. Now, if you read the Quran exonerates the Jews. So here's what people don't know. Okay, a lot of people don't know this, but you have the Old Testament and you have the New Testament. The New Testament is blaming the Jewish people for the death of Christ. They call it the greatest crime in history. Mm-hmm. Then after a while, the Jews started writing the Talmud. The Talmud is a Jewish book written by rabbis, who some say is even higher than the Torah. Okay? In the Talmud, it says, yes, Jesus came, and yes, we killed him. We put him up on a
crucifix.
Not a crucifix, but they say like a stick. Okay, they hung him. Okay, they stoned him. They hung them for blasphemy. And they say that he's now burning in hell in excrement, and that his mother
feces,
was pregnant.
And his mother
feces.
was a whore. Yeah.
His mother got pregnant by a Roman soldier. That's what really happened. So they insult Jesus. Okay? So you have to understand the dynamic. Now, you have the Old Testament, then you have the New Testament. The New Testament says the people of the Old Testament are responsible for this crime, murdering Jesus. Then you have the Talmud that admits to the crime. The Christians are saying you guys killed Christ. The Jews killed Christ. And then the Talmud is saying, yes, we killed Christ. Okay? You follow? The Quran says, listen to what the Quran is saying. The Quran comes after the Talmud. The Quran is saying the Jews are boasting about killing Christ. Okay? Because if you read the verse about the crucifixion, it says the Jews say Jesus, son of Mary, the Messiah, oh yeah, we killed him, okay? We crucified him, we killed him. Now the Quran says it's not true. No, they didn't crucify him, nor did they kill him. So the Quran is saying even though some scriptures or some Jews claim they killed him, it's not true. They're not responsible for the greatest crime in history. Why were the Jews, by the way, hated so much throughout history? Holocaust, genocides, pogroms. Why were they hunted down? All because of the Christian interpretation that they're responsible for the worst crime in history. What's the worst crime in history? The blood of Christ.
Killing God.
They shed the blood of Christ. What's that?
Killing God.
Killing God. The Quran is saying they did not kill God. Even if they say they did, they didn't. What did that do? That exonerates them. In our tradition, the Jew is not criminal. He's not a criminal. He's not responsible for murdering God. Astaghfirullah. You can't even say this. How could a group of people murder God? It's impossible to us, right? So Muslims didn't have a view that these people need to be hunted down or whatnot. Now, again, I want to stress something really important. That was an interpretation at a time where Christians had a dark interpretation. Okay, they literally wanted to hunt down every last Jewish person. Okay, now today Christians don't think that. They don't interpret things the same way. Okay, so I want to be clear on that. There was a time where select influencers in Christianity interpreted it that way, and you can interpret it that way because they did. Islam always interpreted it as they're not responsible for the death of Christ. It's literally explicitly expressed in the Quran. It's the Jews boasting they killed Christ, and then the Quran refuting them, saying, no, you didn't crucify him, nor did you kill him.
Well, the Quran does say that the Jews killed some prophets.
Yes, but not Christ. Mm-hmm. Nobody's hunting down the Jews for killing prophets or not obeying Moses, alayhi salam. You understand?
It's Jesus.
It's literally for this one event, because they say, hey, you killed God. You killed a sinless man. So what I'm trying to tell you is, in history, Islam exonerates the Jews. We never had a Holocaust. You heard Shmuley say it himself. I don't know. I didn't hear it, but I hope your listeners can hear it. Look, Shmuley says, look, we owe a great debt in the video. He's saying we owe a great debt to the Muslim world. Why? They protected us during Catholic Spain. They never had a Holocaust. We thrived under their reign. You should read the works of David Wasserstein. David Wasserstein explains more reasons on why the Muslims protected and saved the Jews. Okay, don't forget, when the Jewish people were being persecuted by the Christians, the Ottomans sent ships to rescue the Jews. Why? Because to us, they're dhimmi. They're a protected people. They're in our book. Okay, so it's a very, very important thing. And a lot of people don't know about the conquest of Jerusalem. When Jerusalem, here's what people have to know, okay? Basic history. Basic history. The Jews were kicked out of Jerusalem in the year 70 by the Romans. The Romans occupied the Jews. The Jews lived under the Roman rule, and they were being crushed and persecuted and tortured, and their women being raped and just abducted. Caesar wanted to put a statue of himself in the temple. That's where the Jews draw the line. You won't put a statue of Caesar in the temple. You had a group called the Sakari. The Sakari were a Jewish group. They carried a blade. The blade was a Sakari blade, okay? They called it the Sakari. This blade, they were the Hamas of the day. The Sakari was Hamas. The Jews had a group called Sakari. You could call them Hamas, okay? Because You know what Hamas means? Like, you know what a zealot is? A zealot? Somebody who's very religious, somebody who like takes it to an extreme, okay? The zealots was a name for a certain group of Jews, okay? Because these Sakari, they were also called zealots. I don't want to make it complicated. In the year 70, Rome was on top of the Jews. They were crushing the Jews. They were trying to get the Jews to capitulate and worship Caesar. The Jews didn't want to worship Caesar. They'd rather fight with a bitter end than worship Caesar. The Sakari were saying, we won't negotiate with Rome. We won't do diplomacy. And even the Jews who would do diplomacy with the Romans, they would get killed by the Sakari. So you had Jews even killing Jewish people. You had extremist Jews, is what I'm trying to say. Hardcore extremist Jews that said, look, we got to liberate Jerusalem at the time from any Roman influence whatsoever. We got to eradicate the Romans. We got to get them out. They were extreme. Then you had more moderate Jews who were like, hey, we can live together. Let's just make rules where we don't have to worship Caesar, etc. In the year 70, the Romans expelled the Jews. They burned their temple. Now, when you go to Jerusalem today, you see the Jews, they have something they refer to as the Wailing Wall. You see the Jews praying to the wall?
Yeah, I see people like Floyd Mayweather, they go up and they...
Yes. Floyd will do anything for money, but that's a topic for another day. Floyd, if you got the money, man, he'll kiss anything. He'll wail to any wall. Don't worry. Tomorrow, if you have money, he's gonna go to the mosque and pray. Don't worry. If you more money, he'll put on a cross and go to the church. Yeah. Even more money, he'll go to India.
Well, it's not just Mayweather. It's every American politician. It's just a funny picture of them.
Yeah, but it's all about money. But you see that wall? That's the last surviving wall. In the year 70, the Romans burned down the temple. They crushed the temple. That's the one wall remaining. So that wall is really old. It's 2,000 plus years old. 2,000 years ago, they burned down the Jewish temple and they kicked out all the Jews. You know what they did with that space where the temple used to be? They turned it into a garbage site. Because later the Rome converts to Christianity and the Christians turned the temple of the Jews into a garbage site. Now, the Muslims come and conquer Jerusalem. About over 500 years later, the Muslims come and they conquer Jerusalem. Omar bin Khattab.
The Ottomans, which empire?
No. The Sahaba. Omar bin Khattab. Okay. I'll send you a really good lecture from a non-Muslim who details all of this. Okay. Now you have to understand something about Muslim conquest. Muslim conquest is very different. Okay, especially when we say the rightly guided Khalifa, because later on Muslims did bad things that are not Sunnah. Okay, but the Sunnah, when Muslims conquer, they're rightly guided. If you do it by the book, if you do it by the religious standards, you don't expel the people. When Umar ibn Khattab conquered Jerusalem, he didn't kill any civilians. He only expelled the politicians. That's it. And he allowed them to take their gold and their riches, whatever they can carry. You can leave. But the politicians had to go. The government has to go. They only fight wars against the government. The Sunnah, you can only fight wars against the government, not the people. The people are innocent. The people are dhimmi. They're a protected people.
Very different than Israel's tactics today.
Exactly. We fight the government. That's why I don't agree with Hamas. Hamas was shooting at civilians as well. But that's another topic, okay? Because I think there's war crimes on both sides.
Allegedly.
Well, okay. Well, we'll talk about that because I think there is some atrocities that have to be admitted to. Okay, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Omar bin Khattab, he conquers Jerusalem in the year 70. Yeah. Sorry, not the year 70. 500 plus years after the year 70. Okay, so nearly more than 500 years passes. The Muslims finally arrive. They conquer Jerusalem. What happens? Omar bin Khattab asks them to show him where is the temple of the Jews, and they show it to him, and it's a garbage site. Omar bin Khattab, the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, he walked with the Prophet every day. He was with the Prophet every day. When he saw it was a garbage site, he went and he started clearing the garbage out with his own hands. Now, don't forget, at the time, he's the world's most powerful man. Don't forget, at this time, right now, the Muslims are the most powerful nation in the world. He's cleaning out the garbage with his own hand. All the Muslims start cleaning out the temple. And what did the Muslims do? Omar bin Khattab ordered a colony of Jews to return to Jerusalem. He brought back the Jews to Jerusalem. Who brought back the Jews to Jerusalem?
Muslims.
It's the Muslims.
So they should return the
The
favor
Jews
today.
were expelled for over 500 years. They couldn't go to Jerusalem for 500 years. Who brought them back? The Jews always were successful when Islam was successful. Always. Every Islamic success resulted in a Jewish success. That's not my words. That's David Wasserstein's word, a professor of Jewish studies. Islam protected and made way for the Jewish people. Why did he bring back the Jews? Because they're part of our religion. We believe in their prophets. Their Aqidah is very close to ours. What do you think about that? Did you know any of this?
I did.
By the way?
But then why? So if
You're
their Aqidah was very similar, then why does Rabbi Shmuley and Ben Shapiro, the two instances where they have a completely different faith? So Ben Shapiro saw Trump won the election and he says, well, he tweets, "Well done, God." Rabbi Shmuley, when talking about October 7th on the day of the election, he's like, God was sleeping on October 7th. So we don't believe in that. Like, we believe everything happens for a reason, that God has a plan. But the way that they talk about God, it's like God is an employee for them. Like he works, when he does a good job, well done.
Do you think they believe in God?
I think so.
I think they believe in their God. I believe every human in their heart of hearts believes in God. But do you think they think about God? They're always in a forgetful state. Okay. They use God as a weapon. It's a talking point. It's a weapon. It's a cult. Look, Israel was founded not by believers. It was founded by secular individuals. Yet they call it a Jewish state. But Jewish to them doesn't mean religion anymore. To them, Jewish means you're born a certain race. It's an ethnicity and a religion, but you don't have to practice a religion. You can be an atheist and be a Jew in their mind.
Yeah,
You understand?
like Seth Rogen, Hollywood Jews, all these people. I would argue that a lot of their religion, their faith and their belief, what they think about more is the Holocaust. They put more faith into that than they do into anything that is written in the Torah.
Right. That's why I say, look, I'm more Jewish than Rabbi Shmuley. I actually literally believe in God. I'm actually Semitic. I'm more Semitic than Netanyahu, that's for sure. I would love to see a DNA test from Netanyahu. I want to see if his blood is more Semitic than mine. I bet anything it's not.
DNA tests are banned in Israel for this reason.
No, exactly. Exactly. But look, I also understand they're culturally and traditionally Jewish. You don't have to be genetically Jewish. They're the ones who are saying that. They're saying, look, your mother has to be from a Jewish line. It has to go back to Abraham. But their line doesn't go back to Abraham. They mixed culture with genetics. So look, religion is two things. Okay, Judaism is two things. It's a culture and it's a religion. It's an ethnicity and it's a religion. We're conflating the two things all the time. And you know, was it Ben Gvir who said? Not Ben Gvir. I'm forgetting the founder of Israel now. He was saying, look, there's no exact definition for Jew. Okay, so what's a Jew? It's what we tell you is a Jew. So they're not going by the text. They're not going by the Torah. They're going by what they see fit. So for instance, if you're a Jew and you want to be atheist, that's fine. If you convert to Islam, you lose your citizenship. If you convert to Christianity, you're done. So, but he's ethnically Jewish. He's born from a Jewish mother. No, it doesn't matter. You converted to one of those two religions, you're done. Atheist will accept you. So it's not really a religion anymore. It's become something else. You know, it's a type of culture, genetic, religion, race. It's a blend of everything. So they tell us what's a Jew. Okay, so they tell us, well, now I have a definition of Jew. I think a definition of Jew is one, you believe in God. I don't think you can be an atheistic Jew. I think that's an oxymoron. It doesn't exist. You're culturally Jewish, you claim to be Jewish, but for me that's very superficial Judaism. Very superficial. You don't believe in God. I don't know if Shmuley believes in God. Honestly, like not in his everyday behavior. Like I couldn't behave like that because I'd be worried that I'm angering God.
You have fear. He doesn't have fear for God.
I have a fear of Allah. I have a fear of God. You know, he's touching his daughter and he's dancing and he's acting like you're a rabbi, man. You're selling sex toys with your daughter. You're putting your daughter up like she has. Like, look, there's nothing wrong with sex. Sex is a perfectly halal thing if you're doing it with your wife, whatnot. But have some shame. You're trying to promote like sex toys and things that.
So what separates a real Jew from a Muslim? Because they're monotheistic, are they not? And it seems like they have, like you said, real Jews.
Of course.
So yeah, what's
of course
the difference
they're monotheistic
between a Jew and a Muslim?
Well, look, here's the thing. Okay, some Jews believe in Muhammad alayhi salam. Some of them do, but they say this. Okay, look at what they say. They say Muhammad was for the Gentile. Muhammad alayhi salam is for the Gentile because look, you have Abraham, right? Alayhi salam. He had two women, Hagar and Sarah. Hagar gave birth to Isaac. Hagar gave birth to Ishmael alayhi salam. The Prophet Muhammad comes from Ishmael alayhi salam. The Jewish line comes from Isaac alayhi salam. We're two lines from the same man, Prophet Abraham. You understand? We're two half brothers. We're literally half brothers. Now, in the Bible, it tells Abraham, it commands Abraham, take Ishmael alayhi salam and take him to the desert. Now, where he takes him in the desert, the Bible describes is where is Saudi Arabia today. And Abraham prays for Ishmael, and he says, don't worry about Ishmael. I'm going to make him a great nation. Like you see the stars, that's how many descendants you're going to have. Don't worry about Ishmael. I'm going to make him a great nation. The Bible is promising that Ishmael is going to be a great nation. What nation came out of Saudi Arabia? There's only one. The Prophet's nation, alayhi salam, Islam. And how many are we? We're like the number of the stars. They can't deny we exist from their lineage. You can't deny it, because either the prophecy is not true, it never happened. It did. Obviously, there's a great nation from Saudi Arabia. That's us. And guess what? We believe in one God. We keep the Torah. We keep the law of the. We keep the 10 Commandments. We believe in the Torah. It's a complex topic, but we believe in the essence of the Torah. We believe in the Injil. We believe in all the prophets. We believe in the other side, the lineage of Isaac. We believe in Isaac. We're part of the same monotheistic faith that goes back to Abraham alayhi salam. You understand? So they can't deny us in this event. So the Jews, a lot of Jews will tell you, will say, look, we believe Muhammad was sent by God because he's from the lineage of Ishmael. They have the correct understanding. I'll send you quotes from rabbis. They'll tell you, look, the only other religion that worships God like we do is Islam. I'll send you many quotes from rabbis saying that. There's only one other religion, like Judaism, that worships God correctly, that understands monotheism, and it's Islam.
So why are they not Muslim?
Because they say in our book, we're promised to this law, this Sharia. We have to maintain it forever. It's an eternal covenant. So they're saying that's a correct Sharia also, but that's for his Sharia, Ishmael's Sharia.
Okay, a different lineage. So
Prophet Muhammad. There's two Moses. There's two men that are. There's the second Moses is Muhammad, alayhi salam. We have a covenant with Moses. We're on this line. You're on the other line. They're both good. They're both true. Understand?
So is that an analogy?
That's the argument. That's the argument. I don't agree with it.
You don't agree with
I'm
it?
not saying I agree with it.
Okay.
No, I don't agree with it.
So do you believe
But
that
that's
there's
the
chosen
argument.
people?
I think they were chosen to give us the law. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. But if you don't follow the law, you failed the test. You failed your endeavor. You failed your mission. Understand? They failed the mission.
So you believe the
Now, the
chosen
Jews who
people
kept-
failed the test?
The chosen people who teach don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, and if their hearts, they look, it's complicated. So basically, I think that if you, it depends on how much knowledge you have, how much you understand, how you look. If you're an honest person, you can do no wrong. I'll give you, for instance, okay. We have a hadith. We have a famous hadith. Okay, let me give you a hadith. This man tells his children, look, when I die, incinerate me, turn me to ash. They say, okay. So he dies, he turns to ash. And then God resurrects him on the day of judgment. And God tells him, why did you ask to be cremated? He says, because I feared you. I don't want to face you. Meaning he thought he's a sinner, he's not good enough, he's not worthy of God. So he had such a fear of Allah. He said, look, incinerate me, cremate me, so that God will never be able to resurrect me. Now, to say God can't resurrect you, that's kufr. In the hadith says God enters him into paradise. But he was kufr. To say God cannot resurrect me is kufr. But in his understanding, in his point of view, in his understanding, how he equated the situation, he had a fear of Allah. And because of he had a fear of Allah, even though he had kufr, but his kufr, he doesn't understand his kufr. God knows that if he understood his kufr, he wouldn't have done it. You understand? Because kufr means blasphemy. To say God can't resurrect you because you cremated yourself, that's blasphemy. You don't understand God. But obviously he was not that much of a deep thinker. You understand? Mm-hmm. But God, because the man had a fear of God, he was humble towards God. felt unworthy, he was granted paradise. So somebody can have a wrong belief, but his intention is good. So if you were born in a Jewish family and all you know is Judaism and you think you're doing the right thing, you think you're pleasing God, you don't have critical thinking, you've never been exposed to other truths.
You can still make it to heaven.
I think, because the Quran says that Jews and Christians that do good, they have nothing to fear. And then later on the Quran says there's only one path to Allah. So now we have to reconcile the two. And there are different ways scholars reconcile it. I'm telling you that if somebody saw two religions and he chose one because of pride or loyalty to humans or because he didn't want to be shamed publicly or whatnot, then he chose other than Allah. Okay, then he's liable. But if that was his best understanding at the time, let's say, for instance, us Muslims do a bad job of representing Islam. And people are turned off by Islam because we're saying all sorts of crazy stuff, like kill them all or whatnot. And people have a fitra inside. Oh no, killing people is not good. Murdering people, they have a fitra also, don't forget. They're like, hey, it can't be right what they're saying. If we have a bad example of Islam, we're going to be the ones who are liable. And the Quran says, look, if you don't fulfill your mission, I'll replace you with another people. Like, we have to fulfill our mission. So who's fulfilling our mission? The Quran says God is going to choose between us, because the Quran refers to all sorts of, how we debate and how we have sects and all that. Oh, don't worry, wait till judgment day. God is going to choose between you. But what I'm trying to tell you is, if somebody is doing their best to get close to God and they're really being genuine, I think they have nothing to fear.
I agree.
For me, the clear answer is Islam.
Yeah, I agree. So people have asked me before that what started up a lot of controversy in my community was I had my friends, Muhammad Ajab and Ali Dawa, they came on my stream and they said they would rather have 50 gay sons than have one Christian son. I don't know, maybe smiling, maybe so. I would rather have a Christian son any day. There's no doubt in my mind. Which would you pick?
I would have stopped before I got to 50 if they were all turning gay.
49, you're like, maybe I'll stop having kids.
Wait, maybe I should have it. Maybe something's wrong with the water I'm drinking, Look, no, seriously speaking. Look, are the gay sons Muslim?
Yeah.
Listen, I'll tell you something. The worst sin is shirk.
Yeah.
The worst. It's heavier. Okay. Now, it's not an insult to gay people. I believe that we all have our journey.
Shortcomings,
okay? Yeah. I always tell my sons, look, we're not gay. We're conditioned you. Listen, I'm being totally honest. You can be conditioned to be gay.
Yeah.
Look, also, look, you could be born gay. I believe that, and you could be conditioned to be gay. Okay, let me, guys. I'm telling you, this is not my invention.
You think someone can be born gay?
I think you can be born gay. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Now it's your fitna. In our worldview, look, it's your fitna. If you're born gay, look, if I'm born with the thirst for alcohol, it's not haram. It's only the drinking of alcohol is haram. The thirst for alcohol is my fitna. That you're going to understand because you're a Muslim and we're not supposed to drink alcohol.
But how could someone be born with a thirst for alcohol if they've never tasted it?
Okay, let's say I didn't know alcohol was haram. I started drinking and then I convert to Islam, but I have a thirst for alcohol.
Well, that's not being born with alcoholism. That's you learned it.
Okay, yeah, it's a conditioned response, but that's irrelevant to the point. What I'm trying to say is, okay, let's say I'm predisposed to want to murder. I'm a psychopath. Like, I want to kill somebody. Like, I just get a thrill of killing.
Wait, but doesn't that go what we were talking about with original sin? We believe that babies are born pure. So how could somebody want to be a serial killer without being conditioned?
That came later. That came later.
So but that wasn't he wasn't born with that. It wasn't innate.
No, listen. That's what I'm trying to say. Look, what I'm telling you. It's not a sin to want. He hasn't sinned yet. Look, if I'm born with something, look, when I saw a woman, nobody ever told me to like a woman. When I first saw a woman, I want bananas. I want that. I don't know why, but that's what I want. That's inside me. I was born with that instinct.
But that's not a sin.
Well, okay, fine. But let's say, I don't know. Let's say, for instance, I see a squirrel and I want to throw a rock at it. I want to crush that squirrel. Then I don't want to eat it. I just want to kill it. That's a sin. Right? Okay. I want to crush that. I want to take that rock and just for fun, I want to smash that rock on top of the squirrel just to see what happens. And that's haram.
Haram.
I have that desire. What I'm trying to tell you is the desire is not haram. The action is
The
haram.
action is okay.
The action is haram. Look, if I want to yell at somebody, just like curse them, I have that feeling, I'm angry. I have this anger inside me, and I want to yell. Well, it's haram to yell at that person and insult them. But it's not haram to feel that way. We have to make a distinction here, okay? So some Muslims are gay. They tell you, look, I'm gay. I don't want to be gay. I wish I wasn't gay. No, I'm telling you, it's not haram to be gay. It's haram to act. The act is haram. The act is haram. Look, how about this one, okay? I want to sleep with a woman outside. No, she's not my wife. I want to sleep with her. I'm born with that. I don't do it. It's haram. But the desire to want to have more women is not haram.
I guess it's the difference between a natural desire and an unnatural desire.
Well, here's the thing. Do you think look, you can be conditioned. Look, there's something in psychology they call nature versus nurture, okay? You have nature, how you're born. You have instincts. You're born with predisposition. You want to eat. You want to drink. You want to sleep. You want to cover yourself when you're cold. You want to uncover yourself when you're hot. You have these sensations. Okay, so like when a kid is born, he wants to put everything in his mouth. Why? It feels good. He tastes good. It's delicious. It's sweet. He doesn't know why, but he has these receptors in his mouth, and he wants to stimulate them. As he grows, he discovers other parts and other functions of his body. Okay? What I'm trying to tell you is the desire is not haram. It's the action that's haram. So if somebody was naturally born gay, he wants to be gay, the action is haram. Now in Islam, it's not true that we find gays and we throw them off buildings. That's not true. I just heard Richard Dawkins say that, oh, well, the Islam, they're the worst. They throw gay people off the roof. That's not the punishment for being gay. That's not the punishment for being gay. Okay, look, in Islam, if you're gay, it's not haram. It's the action. What's the action? The action has to be done publicly. It has to be seen by 4 people. And when I tell you seen by 4 people, they have to see the action. Now, what I'm trying to tell you, look, it's not my favorite topic, okay? What I'm trying to tell you is, it's if you go and do a pride parade in a Muslim country, it's going to be a problem. Now you're propagating. You're saying what's haram is good. Mm-hmm. You're teaching the young kids to be influenced now, to think. Here's what I'm trying to say, okay? Look, my kids, I teach them when they're young that they were born a man, and I program them the best I can to be a man. When they were young, I gave them a male name. I gave them male, like, toys that are for boys. I did activities that are for boys. I told them everything that a man needs to learn, a man's responsibilities. I conditioned what's between his ears, his mind, to be a man. When he looks in the mirror, he sees a man, and he feels like a man inside his head. He has a harmony between what's inside his head and what he sees as his physical body. Now, there's something called gender dysmorphia. This is what my real point is, okay? Maybe earlier I wasn't clear. Some young kids, when they're young, they're born, they're told they can decide what they want. You could be a boy, you could be a girl, you could play with a Barbie doll, you can do the dishes, you can mop, or you can play with a truck, you can play with whatever games you want. You want to wear a dress today? Wear a dress today, even though he's born a boy. You want long hair and you want to paint your fingernails? No problem. There are no gender stereotypes. I'm raising you as you wish to be. Mm-hmm. Then one day he chooses wrong. Maybe he chooses long hair, fingernails, a dress, little shoes. He decides to do ballet. And then he goes through a change. He goes through puberty. And he realizes, wait a second. I see a man in the mirror, but I feel like a girl inside because I was always treated like a girl. Now he has what they call gender dysmorphia. What I see in the mirror is not how I feel inside. The people who have this problem, they're the people with the biggest self-deletion rate. I'll use those words because I know it's a sensitive topic. They push the delete button on themselves more than any other group. Okay, I don't know on Discord if it's like...
No, you're allowed to say that. You're allowed to say this.
Okay. So they commit suicide, right?
Yeah.
They're the highest suicide rate.
Yeah. Transgender people have the highest suicide rate of any demographic.
They see something in the mirror and they don't like what they see. They're uncomfortable in their own skin. They want to be what they were conditioned when they were young. Because we can nurture you. Nurture means how I raised you. Also affects your psyche. Mm-hmm. So you have nature. You're born a certain way. And we have a way we can nurture you. I'll give you for instance. Okay, let me give you a for instance. I studied the Greeks. Okay, the Greeks were famous for having sex with young boys.
Very gay.
You sure I can say anything I want now?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Look, it's not a secret. What I'm saying now is not a secret. And how did they condition young boys to accept a man to penetrate them? I mean, you gotta have one incredible story to tell that young kid, to make it okay. What did he tell that kid? Well, he said, look, this is what the Greeks would say. Man, trust me, I studied this myself, okay? It's not my favorite part of Greek philosophy, but it's in there. They tell the young man, what's superior, a man or a woman? And everybody at that time, don't forget, this is the ancient world, okay? We don't want to judge them with our standards. But in their standards at the time, all the greats were men. The great mathematicians, the great conquerors, the rulers, the thinkers, the farmers, everything was controlled by men. Women were second-class citizens in the ancient world. Nothing much higher than a slave. The woman was nothing, okay, in the Greek world. Nothing. So a young boy would be like, yeah, the male is superior. So if you have sex with something, what's better, having sex with something inferior or having sex with something superior? It's having sex with something superior, exactly. That's why we have sex with you. Now, the Greeks, when they were writing like this and thinking like this and talking like this, they had no shame. It was a commonplace for a mature man to have sex with a prepubescent boy. It was commonplace. Now, today, we look back, we cringe. It's not normal. But they were conditioned that way. The Greeks today don't practice that. The Greeks today converted to Christianity. They're Orthodox Christian, okay? They're not Catholic Christian. Even that is a separate topic. They today don't say, they're the same genetics. Remember, we said nature versus nurture. The same genetics, but a completely different outlook. You shouldn't do that. That's wrong. That's haram. And it's undesirable. How come the Greeks later on made it undesirable? Well, they converted to Christianity, and Christianity put a stop to that. What I'm trying to tell you is you could teach people a behavior. You could teach people when they're really young to like something, to desire something. So that's why Islam, if you look at Islam, everything that's haram is what harms the nuclear family. Everything that's halal doesn't harm the nuclear family. The nuclear family is a mother, a father, and 2 or 3 children. Okay? Everything that harms the nuclear family, my brother, it's haram. What kills the nuclear family? Well, adultery kills the nuclear family. Extramarital sex kills the nuclear family. Drugs and alcohol. Gambling kills the nuclear family. Homosexuality. You know, my kids, I tell them, look, if I was gay, you wouldn't exist. Aren't you happy my parents conditioned me to be heterosexual? I was born a man and they taught me to be a man. I'm comfortable being man. We have the nature of man, so we nurture you to be a man.
Are you allowed to believe that in Canada?
What do you mean?
In Canada, they're pretty restrictive with this.
Yeah,
beliefs.
They are, totally. But look, here's the thing. I have the right to raise my kids as of now, because I think in the future they're going to try and interrupt this kind of process, because they're already starting now.
In the near future.
They're asking kids, what gender are you? At a young age. And they don't tell the parents. They don't inform the parents.
The school does it without your knowledge.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So now the government's slowly coming between me and my kids. Right? But I'm not worried about it because I spend time with my kids. I talk to my kids. I tell them, doesn't it make sense that you're born a boy and I taught you to be a boy? Think about your computer, okay? You have a computer, yeah? Mm-hmm. There's a computer, that's the hardware, and then you have the software, the program. Right?
You're downloading bad software in school.
No, what I'm telling you is, I have a computer. I put the program. You're a computer. I gave you the program of a computer. I didn't give you a program of a spaceship, or a boat, or a Game Boy. I put you the computer for. I bought a Mac. I have a Mac. You were born a Mac. I gave you the software for a Mac. It has to be in harmony, is what I'm trying to tell you. You were born a boy. I taught you to be a boy. If my daughter, she's born a girl. I taught her to be a girl. So we have hardware, our body. Then we have software, what's inside your mind. And when you're born, your mind is very fertile. Psychology shows it's extremely, extremely fertile. You can implant almost anything in their mind. Okay? Now, I'm telling you that even though I program my kids to be males, they're a born male, and I program them to be male. Still, I would tell you a slight amount of people are born attracted to the same sex.
Why?
Because think about it. They have why? It's a fitna. Fitna means it's a test from Allah. How are you going to juggle it? It's your fitna. Understand? It's your challenge from Allah. How are you going to juggle it? How are you going to overcome this test? Now, your fitna is harder than mine, maybe. Fitna, you understand what fitna means? Fitna means it's your test from God. My test from God might be something else. You know, we all have the same test, okay, to worship Allah, to recognize Allah, but we also have other tests. Let's say, for instance, I lose my job tomorrow. Okay, let's say I lose my job. And I go home and I lament. And I just like go in a downward spiral and I'm super negative and I start drinking alcohol and I start, you know, like thinking about killing myself and all that. That shows I don't have a faith in God. And a Muslim brother would tell me, look, that's your fitna. God took away your job. Have faith, is going to replace it with something better. Mm-hmm. Well, if I believe in God and every God has control of all things, I can, you know, say to myself, you know what? I will keep living tomorrow. I'm not going to start drinking alcohol. I'm not going to go in a downward spiral psychologically. I'm not going to get depressed. I'm going to get up tomorrow and go find a job and have a faith. I have a belief that I'm going to overcome this fitna. Mm. Now, people have fitnas of every kind. Islam teaches you people have fitnas of every kind. And it can be that one of your fitnas is that you're homosexual. It can be. Well, we know we have homosexual Muslims.
What makes somebody a homosexual? Is it the act or is it the thought?
The act. The desire is not haram.
So if it's the act, then nobody's born gay because they haven't.
If it's the act, no, it's not what makes you homosexual. What makes you homosexual is you're attracted to the same sex. Okay. Now that in itself is not haram. All right. That's outside of your control. Look, do you like chocolate or do you like vanilla?
I dabble with both.
Let's say you had to choose one.
Vanilla.
Okay. You chose vanilla. Did you decide that when you were young?
No.
No. Okay. Some people, they see a guy, some people see a girl, and they like the guy better. The same way you liked vanilla. Yeah? Okay. Now, it's haram to engage in this. Right. Understand? Now, here's the thing.
But before you continue, it's not really like chocolate vanilla. It's like chocolate and dog poop. Like one nurtures you and one's bad for you.
Okay. Look, I'll say something. I wouldn't say it that way because that's very insulting to them, right? It's very insulting. It's not nice because you're saying, look, you're attracted to dog poop. So that person that you love is dog poop. It's you have to be careful with that because I would say we shouldn't, you know, the Quran says when you talk to people, talk to them in the best manner. Like I'll give you for instance, okay?
That's true.
Moses alayhi salam, he was told to go talk to Pharaoh. Pharaoh in the Quran is the worst of humanity. Pharaoh. The Quran commands Moses alayhi salam, go and speak to him softly. That's Pharaoh. Pharaoh, if you go ask a sheikh tomorrow, who is the worst of humanity? You're going to say Pharaoh, the Pharaoh. Why? Because he was given so many miracles, so many chances to believe in Allah, but he said, no, I'm Allah. He's God. You know, Pharaoh says, I'm God. Okay, that's the shirk, right? The ultimate shirk. Even though he was given miracle after miracle, proof after proof, he still kept saying he's God. So he was the worst of humanity.
And now his body's on display for everyone to see.
Right. But when Moses alayhi salam was commanded to go see him, he was commanded to go see him and speak softly to him. The first was a soft speech, and then it escalated. One plague after another till, he was drowned in the sea. Okay, so it got worse and worse and worse because God kept giving him harsher and harsher convincing proofs till he drowned them in the sea, right? Okay. Here's the thing. Look, flies, you know flies? Mm-hmm. Like a fly flying around?
Yes.
They love poop. They love excrement. They hang out. They love it. They're built, not in a way they chose. They're built in a way that excrement, horse shit, is desirable to them. If you see a pile of horse shit somewhere, you're going to see flies, yes or no?
Every time.
You're built in a way that the horse shit is disgusting to you, right? But to a fly, and I'm not liking a fly to a particular group here. I'm just saying, look, we can be built to like anything. That's God's discretion. Now, that's the fitna. It's not that look, if I have an overwhelming desire to kill, let's say, I'm born a psychopath, but I never do it. I know it's haram. I know it's forbidden, and I never kill. Well, on the day of judgment, inshallah, we're going to say God gave him a hard test and he passed it with flying colors. You understand? So if somebody I'm telling you, I raise my kids so they have a harmony between their body and their mind. But even then, after all that, if he was gay, then I'll believe him. Now, I'm not saying it's halal. It's completely haram. I'm trying to make a point here. What I don't want is to send my kids to anywhere where they convince them that, hey, you could decide whether you're gay or not, whether you want to be a girl or a boy, whether you want to be a cat or a wolf, whether you want to be this. No. I don't want you to ask my kid if he can decide that for himself, because I don't think my kid should decide whether he's this gender or that. Because I don't think my kid is mature enough to decide whether he wants to drink alcohol or not. Why don't you ask my kid if he wants to drink alcohol or not? Why do you make it forbidden for children to drink alcohol? Why? Because you're like, oh, it's bad for their health. Well, I deem it bad for his health. This ideology, it's bad for his health. It's bad for his psyche. I'm telling you, he's born as a man. He has the equipment for a man. He has the hands of a man. He has the eyes of a man. He has the jaw of a man. Why would I program him to be anything else? Now, I'm telling you, this new wave of wokeness it's confusing kids. It's telling kids, look, decide for yourself. They're not mature enough to decide for themselves. You understand? They're going to choose wrong and regret it later.
So they can't vote, but they can choose their gender.
Exactly.
But it's not really that new of an ideology. In the Talmud, it says that there's 8 genders. They believe in androgynous and multi-gender. So it's actually older than Islam, this belief.
No, listen, that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's in human beings. It's not something we made up for fun. It exists. And if you look at animals in captivity, they also behave that way. Okay, so a lot of people link it to city living. City living when the human beings are very compact and jam-packed. Maybe it's not a good idea to have more human beings. So there's something triggered in their DNA. This is all hypothesis. Okay, just hypothesis. It's not even a theory. It's just a hypothesis. Some people speculate that something's triggered in your head or your epigenetics, because you have genetics and you have epigenetics. Something's triggered in your DNA to make you not want to reproduce. Mm-hmm. So we don't have overpopulation. You understand? Mm-hmm. So look, what I'm telling you is this. I think the woke ideology is going to confuse a lot of kids. It's going to make kids... If I tell you, look, SNEAKO, you have chocolate or vanilla. Okay, it's not going to confuse you. You got to choose one and you're going to try both. Let's say I tell you, no, look, there's every flavor you can imagine. We have caramel, we have caramel mint, we have caramel chocolate chip. That's just the caramel section. I have all these other flavors. I have cotton candy. I have Rocky Road. I start naming you hundreds of ice cream flavors. You're like, wait a second. I'm going to spend a lot of time trying all these ice cream flavors. I don't know which one is right for me. But what if I told you, hey, SNEAKO, you're born like this. This is your flavor. This is what you eat. And you're like, okay, vanilla it is. I never knew anything else other than vanilla. I'm telling you, when you tell a kid, look, there's so many possibilities. You could even be a cat if you want. Now people associate it as a cat. And you got to humor them. I associate it as a spaceship. Well, we got to call him a spaceship now. He's a spaceship. The guy is like, when you tell somebody the possibilities are endless, they have to spend time in their life dabbling in all these endless possibilities. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that with my kids. I think that's child abuse, personally. My kid was born with the body of a man. I named him, I gave him a boy name. I gave him boy toys. I gave him things to do, activities that boys do. I let him hang out with other boys. I let him hang out with the guys. I let him see what men are, and they gravitated naturally towards being men. Now, I pray that my kids don't have that fitra. That fitna of having that desire for the same sex. Now, if they did, now it's between them and God not to commit that sin. Because for us, it's a sin. For the non-Muslim, it's not a sin. For him, it's it's his right. You understand? To indulge in that.
His body, his choice.
Right. But me, I tell my kids, look, that's their way of life. Deen means a way of life, okay? Our deen, it's not acceptable. So I tell my kids, they want to be gay, let them be gay. There's more women for you. Why are you fighting with the guy? Why are you inviting him to Islam? Well, invite him to Islam and tell him, look, in our deen, it's not allowed. In our way of life, it's not allowed. If in his way of life, let them, if they're all gay, so what? So what?
Well, you have to live around them.
Okay, but there's more women for us, SNEAKO. There's more women for us. Now you might have to have 2-3 wives.
Inshallah.
Is that a problem for you?
Inshallah. Four is the goal.
Inshallah, well, I say inshallah, you will have 4 wives, inshallah, and you make more children, more Muslims, more. If they don't want their women, we'll take them, but they don't want them. We're not stealing them. We're not we're not committing murder here. We're not killing people to have more. No. If they don't want to marry their women, if they don't want to, because here's the thing, you know, a lot of women convert to Islam. You know why they convert to Islam?
More than men.
Because they want a guy. What's that?
A lot more women are converting to Islam than men.
Absolutely. Why? Because that Muslim guy is actually going to love me, want to have a kid with me. He's going to take me seriously. This other guy, he just wants to put me in his rotation. I'm his Tuesday girl. He's got a Wednesday girl. He's got a Friday girl. And I'm just in his rotation. She doesn't want to be in his rotation. Okay, if I marry this Muslim guy, he won't put me in a rotation. This guy's actually going to want to have kids with me. He's going to want to settle down. He's going to be, you know, loyal. He's going to be loyal to her. So what I'm telling you is, in their deen, in their way of life, they don't have haram. This is not haram to them. So I would tell them this. Look, they say love is love. Love is love. I would say this. I tell my kids this, okay? And I think Muslim parents should tell this to their kids. Man-on-man rectal penetration, okay, comes with some negatives. It does. One, it's the most transmissive. Guys, they're going to want to cancel me. Is it a fact? I'm only asking you, is it a fact what I'm saying? That's all I want to know. It's the most transmissive method of sex.
They get AIDS.
What?
They get AIDS.
Not just AIDS, any disease. It's more transmissive. If I have a disease, not me. If a man has a disease, the one way he can transmit it, the most secure way he can transmit it, is through man-on-man rectal penetration. Warts, syphilis, AIDS, everything can be transmitted like this. Every STI, okay, every sexually transmitted infection or disease. STD,
that's why earlier I compared it chocolate to feces, because like chocolate is good for you and nurtures you, right? It tastes good, and you can turn it to something that's positive, right? It feeds you. Well, feces, for example, the way that what they do, like they have to wear diapers when they get older if they have too much. They need to take drugs.
10% incontinence.
So
that's another negative.
It's not chocolate and vanilla. It's chocolate versus poisonous chocolate.
Right. So look, at this point, look, it's unhealthy. Why? I tell my kids, I'm honest with my kids. My kids are older. I tell them, look, 10% have incontinence, meaning you have to wear a diaper. You can't control your bowels. So 1, it's more transmissive. 2, you can't control your bowels. It's possible, 10%. And 3, you can perforate your insides. You can have feces leaking out of your gut. I know it's not disgusting. I'm not trying to disgust people, but look, you can perforate, you can injure yourself badly, irreparably. Okay, irreparably. And you will never have kids. Don't forget this, okay? You will never have kids this method. It's just pleasure. That's it. I tell my kids, look, with my wife, I can have pleasure. I could do everything, and I'll have kids.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. I say, if I was gay, you wouldn't exist. What would I be? I'd just be some guy who goes to the market, buys frivolous things, and I go on the internet and cruise. I have nothing important in my life.
How many kids do you have?
Alhamdulillah, I have 3. And 1 adoptive, so 4.
And you engage in quite a bit of debate, do you not?
I really don't have time to debate too much. I have a podcast. I have where I just basically debate with my chat. I don't really do formal debates because I'm really super busy. I wouldn't plan or do much of that. But I studied philosophy, right? So I know I've studied argument. You know, I've studied logic so long. So I just basically do a lot of monologues.
What's the difference, or are there similarities between debate, argument, and MMA?
Well, you know, I would say there's parallels. You know, there's, you know, I would say you could reverse somebody's argument by using what they said against them. You know, they made a point against themselves, similar to MMA, right? If somebody pushes you, you could pull them and use their momentum as energy. So when they tell me love is love, I don't agree. I tell them I don't agree. I said there's only one formula that breeds life. Every single human being every single human being was brought to this world by a man and a woman. Except Jesus alayhi salam and Adam alayhi salam. But I'm talking about today. Everybody living today. They came from a man and a woman. Yes or no? Did two women ever bring a man to a human being to life? Did 2 men ever bring a human being to life?
Not yet.
No. So there's something sacred about the man and the woman. They say love is love. No, I say no. The man and the woman, when they come together, there's something really sacred. This whole world wouldn't exist. SNEAKO, imagine 100% of the population was homosexual.
No.
What would happen?
I don't want to imagine that.
Okay, but just do it for me as a favor. Do it as a favor to me.
You get Israel.
No, man. Listen. If the whole world was homosexual, there would be no more human race. We wouldn't exist. Understand? You can have as much man-on-man action as you want. You're never going to produce a child, right? So the man and the woman is sacred. The relationship of man and woman must be kept sacred for humanity to continue. You know that, look, the LGBT community went from 1% to now it's 12% in the next generation, okay?
Oh.
You think all the woke culture is contributing to the growth? It must be, right?
Absolutely.
It's not hurting it. It's not hurting it. It's
Absolutely.
becoming cool now.
It's very obvious. It's not even really a debate. This is directly contributing to it.
Right. So what happens when they reach 50%? We won't exist anymore.
Society
You
gonna
understand?
collapse,
There's
bro.
a point of no return. Let me ask you something, okay? SNEAKO, look, Kant said this, Immanuel Kant, he was a thinker. He was trying to say, look, if something is moral, everybody can do it. Yes or no?
Correct.
Makes sense, right? If it's moral, we can all do it. You say, okay, look, think about homosexuality. Okay, think about this. If we all do it, just think about it. It's a thought experiment, SNEAKO. I know it's an uncomfortable one. If we all do it all the time, no, we wouldn't exist anymore.
No.
There'll be no more children. There'll be no more families. We'd be eradicated.
Well, that's the agenda, isn't it? Because if there's all these homosexuals, then we're not going to have a family unit. We're going to strive further away from God. We're going to be easily controlled. If there's a population decline and people are running around and confused and they're going to go on medication, they're going to be unhealthy, then there's going to be an elite class of people that could rule over the world while everybody else is confused and straying further away from God, because that's where power comes from.
Well, I would say, look, all the cultures that don't have LGBT, all the cultures that don't have too much liberalism, they're the ones whose population is growing. So cultures like Canada, we rely on immigration because we don't have kids. The average Canadian has very little children. The European birth rate is 1.5. It's very, very low. Why? Liberalism mostly, and the wokeness, let's say. They have to bring us into their countries, traditional people who have nuclear families. But when we get to their countries, they're like, stop being traditional. But wait, you brought me here because you needed my traditional. You needed what I believe in. You needed because I produced these kids. But now they want to take my kids and teach them how to live their way. Because look, everybody, when you have a kid, you want to teach them your way of life. They don't have kids, so they want to teach my kids their way of life. You see, that's the problem. That's the problem I have. Because when I came to this country, they said you could practice your religion, follow the law, pay the taxes. We won't bother you in your religion. Okay, perfect. That's the deal I'm in. I want to practice my religion. I want to teach my kids my religion. But they say no. Now they're telling me we got to teach your kids about this new ideology. And I'm like, no, it doesn't coincide with my religion. It's haram for us. I'm not breaking any laws, but I just don't want your ideologies. That's for you, not for me. Okay? Now they want to teach my kids their way of life. You understand? I don't want them to teach my kids. I tell them, you have your kids and you teach your kids your way of life. A lot of people say, oh, our culture is being diluted because so many foreigners are coming in. Wow, we're coming in for main reasons. You colonized us. You took all our resources. Now we're following the resources. And two, you brought us here because you need our birth rate. Don't forget, SNEAKO, they bring traditional people into their country, immigrants, because they need population. Why do they need population? They don't have kids anymore. The liberal states, the Western states, are very, very low in reproduction rate. Very low. Why is that? One, it's liberalism, too much liberalism, feminism, and of course, woke ideology now is skyrocketing. It's grown immensely in the last, let's say, 20 years. It's grown immensely. They're not producing children anymore. So what's going to happen in the long run? Well, humanity might be saved by the traditionalists, by the conservatives.
Yeah, Muslims are going to dominate the population in probably 200 years because of this effect. And people don't want to adjust.
Much less.
I've had this debate back and forth with white supremacists for a while because, look, the thing with the Muslims and white supremacists have in common is we both believe that Zionism is the root of a lot of evil in the world. But when you talk about this issue, when you try to, because I think what would solve their problem, because they have a very declining birth rate and they want to protect the white race really badly. So I tell them, why don't you convert to Islam? Because then you can have 4 wives. It's going to protect you from wokeness. It's going to reject feminism. You're going to have traditional values. It's going to get rid of this. And they get angry. They say that Islam is a desert religion. It's sand people. You know, you go back to the desert. Right? And so they want to, but they have no solution. They'll say that there's a white genocide going on, but they're not changing their way of life. Right? Because their way of life is there's more white Western women are going to Taylor Swift concerts than they're going to meet their husbands. So something needs to change. Right, where their way right now is not working to protect their race. So if their priority right now is to protect the white race, they need to make an adaptation fast. But they don't. They have this restriction in their heads that Islam, this is desert. The word pronunciation is incorrect and all this. They don't like it. They can't get around it. But
yeah, but they come from Christianity too. Don't forget.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between Christianity and Islam? It's very minimal. One, we don't worship Jesus as God. And 2, we don't think he died for our sins. That's really the two major differences.
The morality is identical.
Like, it's not that far apart. We believe in one God. We trace ourselves back to Abraham. We believe in the commandments. We believe in the same idea of sin, etc. It's not that far off. I mean, they accepted Christianity. Why is Islam such an offense?
It's from propaganda. They think terrorist religion.
Exactly.
It's the
exactly
Arabic.
Because after 9/11, even before 9/11, but especially after 9/11, there was so much propaganda against Islam. So much. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it comes down to propaganda. A lot of propaganda. Like, you could say anything about Islam, negative. You could say the most vile thing about Muslims, and nobody cares.
If you said the same
say
thing
something about it,
about Jews,
another group, you're gonna exactly. Yeah. So we're kind of living, you know, we're kind of living what other groups lived in the past, and now it's our turn, basically. You know, now we're the ones getting attacked.
Do you believe that crypto is haram?
No, not at all. I think that's absurd to say it's haram.
I have a lot of people, a lot of my fans say that a lot when I talk about Bitcoin, but if crypto's haram, then fiat currency is even more haram.
Exactly. What I was talking about that yesterday on my podcast. First of all, Yasser Qadi gave a fatwa saying Bitcoin is not haram. It's not haram. And I saw this one Muslim guy saying Bitcoin is haram, and he didn't understand Bitcoin. He was saying a lot of buzzwords, but he doesn't understand Bitcoin. And I wrote in the chat, please reconsider because you're completely wrong. Do you want to make these bankers more powerful? Like, why? Like, I can't understand. I cannot understand how somebody can side with fiat currency, the worst currency in history. You know, SNEAKO, if you took all the money in all the world, all of it, every last penny, and you gave it back to the bankers, you still owe them money.
Yeah.
You know that? If you gave them all the money in all the world, if you gave it back to the bankers, we still owe them money. You know why? Because when they print money, they give it to you at interest. Those dollars don't even exist in circulation, but you owe us, and it's compounded interest. How on earth did you give me this money? This money is it's a type of slavery. But 99% of people just don't understand that the money that they use every day is a type of slavery. They will always be richer than us. They will always be higher than us until Bitcoin. Bitcoin can change the tables, turn the tables. Because now it's outside of their control. Now they have a competition. Now we have something that's deflationary. Ultimately, it's going to be deflationary. Okay, I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I'm an early adopter. I bought it way back in the day. And I tell you, I highly recommend, especially Muslims, get into crypto and Bitcoin especially. Don't, the other stuff, a lot of it is a scam. Look, everything is a scam till it reaches critical mass. Bitcoin has reached critical mass. The network effect is real. I'm a heavy believer in Bitcoin. It's going to eliminate interest, or a heavy interest. The bankers are the source of most of the world's misery. People just don't understand how evil the banking system is. If you took all the money in all the world, you still owe them money. How's that possible? Well, because they gave you the money with interest. If I lend you $1, if the government gives you $1, he borrowed that dollar on interest.
Which is
He
again
took
haram.
$1 for every dollar he owes.
Usury is forbidden.
He owes $1.05 back. There isn't $1.05 back in the system. It's a huge scam and it's compound interest. It's the ultimate haram. Look, let's talk about money real quick, okay? See, because in philosophy we study money too. Don't forget, Aristotle talked about money. The Greeks were heavily trying to understand what is money. Okay, look, let's say you paint my fence. Okay, you paint my fence and I give you tomatoes, because you painted my fence, and I'm a tomato farmer. We bartered. That's called bartering. You did something for me, I did something for you. We're both happy. Now, how many tomatoes do you want? Well, it depends how many fences do you want me to paint? The more fences I paint, the more fences you paint, the more tomatoes I got to give you, right? We're bartering. Now, let's say you don't like tomatoes. I need you to paint my fence, but you don't like tomatoes. But I have tomatoes. So I ask you, what do you want? You're like, I want a chair. So I got to go find the guy who makes a chair. This guy's the best chair maker. How many tomatoes do you want for my chair? For this chair? I want, 70 tomatoes. So I give the guy 70 tomatoes. He gives me a chair. I give you the chair. You paint the fence. Man, that's a complicated system. That's called the barter system. We're trading. It's complicated. So they invented something called money. You paint my fence, I give you money. That money represents how much you're worth for painting my fence. Your know-how, your years, how rare it is that somebody can paint the fence. It's a very common job, so you're not going to make that much. I give you this thing called money. When I give you money, then you could go take that money and go buy the chair that you like. I don't need to trade you a chair for you painting my fence. We're not using the barter system. Money came about because we wanted to get away from the barter system. Now, the bank holds all the money, right? You have your money in the bank. The bank writes down your name and how much money you got in the bank. There's SNEAKO, and that's how much money he's got. That's called a ledger. It writes down Coach Zahabi and how much money Coach Zahabi has. If you send me $1, the bank's going to be like, okay, I got to adjust the ledger here. SNEAKO has $1 less. Coach Zahabi has $1 extra. That's a ledger. Bitcoin is a ledger. Bitcoin is no different than a bank. But Bitcoin is a public ledger that everybody could see. There's no funny business. A famous bank in my country called TD Bank just got fined $3 billion, okay, because they pulled a scam. The bankers are always messing with the ledger because we don't see the ledger. They have it. All you could see, SNEAKO, is what's next to your name. But everything else, he's hiding it. He's adding money to it. He's taking money from it. He's borrowing money. He's doing all sorts of scam. He's playing all sorts of magical tricks to keep you poor and keep him rich. Your children's children are going to be poorer than his. His rich children are always going to be richer than you per generation. Bitcoin is the opposite. Bitcoin is the same thing. It's a ledger, yet it's public. Now, why would it be haram to have a public ledger? Explain that to me.
Because I never understood the justification why they call it.
There's no justification. There's no justification. The same thing the banker is doing, except they're doing it openly, and the community is using their computer power to verify it. Crypto is an open ledger. It does exactly what the bank does. If Coach Zahabi has 2 Bitcoin, right next to Bitcoin to his name. If he sends one to SNEAKO, adjust the ledger now, verify the ledger that he sent one to SNEAKO. We're just keeping an open ledger. The whole world can see the ledger. It's an honest banking system. Now, here's where it could be haram, okay? Look, I start a new coin. I said, SNEAKO, I tell SNEAKO, tell the world about this coin. Hype it up. Yeah, we're all going to get on this coin. Now, me and you, we took a bunch of coins before. We mined a bunch of coins. Before we told everybody about it, we started a coin. I have 1 million of these coins. You have 1 million of these coins. Then we tell the world, hey, guys, get this coin, man. This coin is going to be the future. People start buying this coin. It used to be worth 1 penny. Now it's worth 10 cents. Now it's worth 75 cents. Now it's worth $1.10. Me and you go on the market and we dump the coins that we mined early before everybody else, before everybody got on the bandwagon. That's called a rug pull. Okay, that's a simplified version of a rug pull. That I would tell you is haram. Of course, that's haram. Yes. Now, that's somebody who's planning in the back to try to rip people off. What's not haram, I would tell you, look, I invested in Bitcoin very early on, but now it has critical mass. Now it's outside of anybody's control to dump on anyone.
What's the price today? Is that a 93 yet?
It hit 93 today, yeah.
Ooh.
It did.
What year did you get in? Oh, it's back down to 89, but...
I got in 2012.
Woo!
Yeah.
Oh,
13. I
mashallah.
got in a
Coach
long-
Zahabi's rich.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I got in a long time ago, my friend. I
Chat,
got
so
in a
if
long
you
time
need money
ago.
you need to borrow money from somebody, you can ask him. Mashallah.
Let me tell you something. I want to tell everybody else something. One more thing. Never sell your Bitcoin. I hear horror stories of people bought Bitcoin, sold Bitcoin. Don't sell Bitcoin. Look, trade large cap coins like Solana, Ethereum, speculate on whether they're going to go up and down. But in the end, when you buy Bitcoin, hold it forever. Like it's such a special coin. Don't ever sell your Bitcoin. In the future, you'll be able to, actually today, you can borrow on your Bitcoin. Okay, so when you borrow on your Bitcoin, it's not a taxable event. Okay, so there's a lot to know about Bitcoin, but I would tell you all the other coins is all about getting more Bitcoin. That's how I see it. Okay, and I would tell you, look, don't trade coins that have small market caps that are meme coins that people are going to rug pull each other. That I would tell you that's wrong. That's bad. Bitcoin is, in my opinion, trustworthy because it's reached critical mass. Okay, so what's critical mass? Imagine, SNEAKO, there's only 2 people with a phone. Okay, 2 people. And then you're the third guy to buy a phone. That phone ain't worth much. There's only 2 people you can call. There's only 2 other guys with a phone. Now I tell you, wait a week, there's going to be 4 other people with a phone. So you're like, oh, there's only 6 people I can call. It's not worth buying this phone. What if I tell you, look, there's going to be 8 billion people with a phone. Everybody in the world has a phone. Now you're like, I got to have a phone.
You need it.
That's the network effect. You understand? Facebook is only important because there's a lot of people on it. Tomorrow you can invent a SNEAKO book and there's only 2,000 people on it and nobody cares about SNEAKO book because there's no network. Right. There's no critical mass. But if you get to 1 billion users, everybody's like, wow, SNEAKO book is the place to be.
You don't sell a little bit at the top? I sold a little bit when it hit 82. I sold a little bit. I sold a bit.
No, but yeah, but I'll tell you why you shouldn't sell. Okay,
where you just skim off the top and buy it when it goes down again.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. But I will tell you, okay, fine, you can do that. But let's say this is fine. But I will tell you when let's say you have $1 million in Bitcoin, don't use that Bitcoin to buy a house, $1 million house. I would tell you, borrow 800,000 and buy a house.
Isn't that haram?
No.
You could borrow money.
You could borrow. Look, it depends how you borrow money.
Okay.
Look, let's say you're a multi-millionaire.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Of course you are. And I have $1 million Bitcoin and I give it to you as collateral. I say, look, hold on to this $1 million. Lend me 800. Lend me 800,000. And we do it Islamically. The banking, I'm allowed to give you back a fee, but not interest, not compound interest. I don't want to get into that debate, but let's say you're allowed to lend me money and we're doing it in a halal way. Now I take that $800,000 and I buy a house. If I went and I sold my Bitcoin, that's a taxable event. I have to pay taxes. Instead of paying taxes, I gave it to you as collateral and I borrowed a debt. Debt is not taxable. What I'm trying to tell you is you want to avoid paying taxes legally on your Bitcoin. So when I take that $800,000 and I make a business with it, I start a business and I slowly buy back my Bitcoin from you. I buy it back. We have a deal for a long time. I'm going to end up giving you something in profit, which is reasonable. It's not compound interest. I buy back my Bitcoin because that Bitcoin, in our view, the Bitcoiners, we think Bitcoin is going to go up forever. So you buy back your Bitcoin. That guy, I gave him back his fiat. I gave him back his money. I took my collateral. He was always safe because if I didn't pay you back, you would liquidate my Bitcoin. You would get your fiat back. I gave you Bitcoin as collateral. Use Bitcoin as collateral in the future. There are smart contracts that can do that as well, meaning there's no human intervention. But then you're avoiding tax. So there's a lot to know about Bitcoin because the thing is, if you're ever going to make a big move with Bitcoin, if you have millions of dollars of Bitcoin, the big Bitcoin players, they never sell their Bitcoin. They borrow against their Bitcoin. Why? It's a taxable event when you liquidate your Bitcoin. And then they want to buy that Bitcoin back. Because that Bitcoin, I want to hand it down to my kids and I want my kids to hand it down to their kids. Because we're always going to be able to borrow against our Bitcoin. We never sell it because Bitcoin is ultimately deflationary. Think about it, SNEAKO. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. But there's more and more people in the world that want Bitcoin. So we have to divide the Bitcoins. They become more and more precious.
You made me regret selling a bit. I only sold like 0.3. 0.3 I regret. I want it back now.
That's okay. As long as you're going to buy back in when it dumps, because Bitcoin is still going to dump to 50%, 40% in the future. Now we're in a super cycle. Now, like, look, I'll tell you something. if you hold Bitcoin for more than 4 years, you've never lost money. Like I always tell people, if you have money that you're ready not to spend for 4 years, buy Bitcoin with it. It's a no-brainer. Now, though, you're in a special time in Bitcoin. You're in a super cycle. Okay, the super cycle is about to explode. Who knows where it's going to go? It might go 120. It might go 150. But then it's going to drop. I think the drop is going to go back down to 50,000, 60,000. That's
50.
when I'm going to jump back in. What's that?
It's probably going to go back down to 50. I say that's the
After a super cycle. It's going to take us super high first. We're going to break records. And then the whales are going to dump. They're going to sell. We're going to drop back 40, 50. Then guys like me are going to jump back in and buy. You want to buy when everybody's not buying. But I'm only buying with money that I'm going to hold for 4 years or more. I'm ready to part with that money for 4 years. Now, the cycle might return before 4 years, but after 4 years, we should hit another super cycle like we're seeing today. You understand? And this kind of cycle is eventually going to topple off because everybody's going to get into Bitcoin. Even Donald Trump said he's going to have a Bitcoin reserve for the U.S. Even the USA is going to start buying Bitcoin.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a brilliant solution. Satoshi Nakamoto, if he's a real person or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. The name, the person, the founding group or person that goes by the name Satoshi Nakamoto was brilliant. He resolved a problem, a major problem, and the reason why he did it in the first block he explains is because of the 2008 what the bankers did. Nobody wanted to bail out the bankers. And the government did anyway. He took taxpayers' money and he gave it back to the bankers. He saved the bankers. The U.S. government saved the bankers. Why? Money talks. Rich bankers pull the strings and they got the government to take from the taxpayer. But it's capitalism, man. You didn't do your banking right. You should go out of business. That's capitalism. That's how it's supposed to be. No, they went in. They took money from taxpayers' money and they bailed the bankers. Satoshi Nakamoto's, what did he do? He fired off the white paper, Bitcoin. And now today we have a new monetary system that the whole world is quickly gaining on. So everybody's getting into Bitcoin. Watch this next bull run. I remember when Bitcoin hit $30,000, everybody was freaking out. Everybody were like, we can't believe Bitcoin was at 30,000. Guys, 30,000, I don't think we'll ever see it again. It's nothing, 30,000. It's nothing. We'll never see 30,000 again. I highly doubt it. We're going to see 60. We're going to see 70. Me, at that time, I'm going to jump back in. Now I'm probably going to buy some large cap coins now because I think the super cycle is coming. I might keep those large cap coins or I might convert them to Bitcoin. I'm not sure. Depending on the utility. Because there are some coins that are going to do better than Bitcoin. So I believe in that. Like I believe in the Solana project, not that I'm recommending it. I think people should do their own research. But I believe in these projects. I think they're going to be here 20 years from now. That's what I always ask myself. Is this project still going to be here 20 years from now? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, I'll probably invest in it.
I told everybody to get Solana when it was at, I think, $100, and now it's at $212. So
yeah, I don't think Solana's. I don't think it's going away. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But there is something I don't like about Solana. There's a lot of meme coins. So one day, if they regulate Solana, all that's going to go. It's going to drop the price. So there is some threats to Solana. There's a lot of meme coins. There's a lot of people out there trying to make bogus coins, whatnot, because they want to ride this wave, and a lot of people are going to fall for it. A lot of people are going to get rich, but it's on the backs of other people. That's what I think is haram. We're like hyping up coins to rug pull people. That I would say is haram. But that's totally not what's going on with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a hype. Bitcoin is us trying to get away from the from the banking ledger. It's a healthy competition to the banking ledger.
What have you learned in philosophy that is not applicable or not directly applicable to Islam? Something a philosophy lesson that you really resonate with that Muslims aren't aware of? Because I want to get more into
that did resonate with me, or it didn't.
That did. Yeah.
I'll tell you something. One of the most famous philosophers, his name is René Descartes. Okay, René Descartes.
Was he like French atheist? Kind of one of those.
No, he was an atheist. He was not. He
was an Enlightenment guy.
What's that?
Was he an Enlightenment era philosopher?
Yes. But he was very theist. He believed in God. He was a Christian. Look, a lot of highly intelligent people believed in God. A lot. Like I can name you, pop you off a long list. Okay. René Descartes said something really interesting. He was trying to find something called what we call in philosophy foundationalism. Okay, foundationalism means I have something so true that nobody can ever doubt it. Like, for instance, your name is SNEAKO, right? What if I tell you, look, your name is SNEAKO, you believe your name is SNEAKO, but it could be that your mother adopted you when you were young and your name was Stuart and she flipped your name to SNEAKO. It could be, you don't know. There's a doubt, right? There's a little doubt.
Fair.
Even though it's less than 0.0001%, still there's a little doubt. You don't know for a fact, you weren't there. So this is what we call Cartesian doubt. It's like hyper radical doubt. Like Descartes asked, how do you know you're not dreaming right now? You could be dreaming. It's possible. When you're in your dream, SNEAKO, when you're sleeping, you're having a dream. You're kicking, you're punching, you're moving.
I don't know I'm dreaming.
You're having all sorts of... What's that?
I don't know I'm dreaming when I'm dreaming.
You don't know you're dreaming when you're dreaming, right? So he was like, I want to know something. Even if I was dreaming, I couldn't be wrong. He wanted something so foundationally solid that you cannot doubt it. Okay, now this is a very deep book. It's a book called The Meditations. I mean, people have written about this book to no end, okay? And he says, look, here's what I'm certain of. Can't break this. He says, look, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum, he says in Latin. I think, therefore I am. I know I exist because I have thoughts, right? And to have thoughts, I have to exist. Even if he speculates, imagine there was this evil god and he was trying to trick you. Every time you touched ice is really hot, but he tricked you to think it was cold. You know, when you touch ice, your hand is cold, right? In reality, ice is hot. This evil god, this demon, he's making you think it's cold, but really he's just fooling you. So you can't even be sure that ice is cold. Like he's look, I know a lot of people are going to find this ridiculous, but he did this for a very good reason. Okay, don't forget, the guy was a very, very accomplished mathematician. Geometry, math, science, incredibly accomplished. But he felt all these sciences were shaky if he couldn't answer this question, if he couldn't find something certain, perfectly certain. Now he said this, listen to what he said, okay? He said something very profound. It's very similar to Islam. That's what I think people miss about Islam. He said, I think, therefore I am. I have to exist because I have to think, right? And if I'm thinking right now, even if I have a doubt, that's thinking. So if you doubt it, you're thinking. And if you're thinking, you exist. Right? So he seemed to have this perfect gem. It was just like this perfect gem. And nobody could doubt it. And from there, from that first block, he said, look, I'm going to build a building for you. The first block is indestructible. Then I'm going to put a second block. And then after that, a third. And then I'm going to bring math, science, history. And I'm bring all that stuff that you doubted earlier. But look, I piled it up on this perfect brick. This brick, nobody can break it. Because if you break this brick, the whole thing will come down. So I have to found it on something so certain, it's unshakable. And I studied this profoundly, and I was reading other philosophers, and then later one philosopher punched a little you think, can you punch a flaw in that? It's pretty tough, right? Because you have to say, look, if I doubt it, I'm having a thought. A doubt is a thought. And if I have a thought, whether it's a doubt or not, it's proof that I exist.
So that proves existence.
But here's where Nietzsche pulled the rug out from underneath him. Nietzsche's like, okay, well, you said I think. Who's this I thing? That's a presupposition. What's this I? I now, you have to define what I is. And in philosophy, I'll tell you something, we cannot define what the I is. What's a person?
Me.
Yeah, me is a sound, right? But what is it referring to? So let me give you an example, okay? Let me give you an example. When you look at a human being's life, okay, Hume said it really beautifully. He said, look, it's like a link of chains. Imagine I have a chain, okay? It has 10 links. I take one link, I destroy it, and I add another on the other end. Imagine you have a link of 10. There's 10 links, right?
You still got 10 links.
Still 10, yeah. Then I destroy the second link and I add another on the end. And I keep destroying one and adding another. Destroying one and adding another. After 10 repetitions, it's not the same chain no more, physically, but it's this chain is a living chain. It's going through this journey. Mm-hmm. The human being is very like this chain, okay? Every cell in your body has been replaced. After 7 years, your body's regenerated every single cell in your body. You ate food, you breathed in air, your body used all that, created chemistry, and rebuilt your body several times over. Your body is like that chain. We took out one chain, we put another. Yet we still call you SNEAKO. imagine your house, okay? Your house has thousands and thousands of pieces that bring it together. But every day I replaced one. But you live in that house and I replace every single piece in your house. But you're like, this is my house. But I'm like, no, man, all those pieces out there that I replaced, that's your house. And you're like, no, man, I come in here every day. The house has a continuity. Like your body has continuity. Even though you're not 1 feet tall when you were born, you're a little baby, you had no vocabulary, you learned all these things, you went through all these changes. Baby SNEAKO doesn't exist anymore. But look at you, we still say he's SNEAKO. There's something between baby SNEAKO and what you are today that's had continuity.
So is the I the soul?
Hold on. The I is subjective, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's something we can't put our finger on exactly. So it's not that he disproved Descartes, it's that he added something that was questionable. He shook it. Nietzsche shook Descartes' cogito, as we call it. Okay, the I think therefore I am. He shook it. Okay, he shook it because now we're like, wait a second, what is the I? Wait a second, what is I? What does it mean, I? So we start saying, who's having these thoughts? What are these thoughts? Are these thoughts happening to you? Are they your thoughts? So it brought in all sorts of debate, and all of a sudden, we brought in doubt into this one saying. Now, I'll tell you something. When I read Descartes, I later read Ghazali, and I realized Descartes, who came 600 years after Ghazali. Ghazali went through the same, Ghazali was a Muslim philosopher, okay? He went through the same journey, trying to prove what is unshakably true. Something you cannot have a doubt. And that's what, I'll tell you something. Remember we said, I think therefore I am? Mm-hmm. The Muslims, we say, La ilaha illallah. Mm. La ilaha illallah means...
There is none worthy of worship except Allah.
But it's deeper than that. It's deep. It's much deeper than that. Ghazali comes to the conclusion that only a God is ultimate truth. Now, I'm giving you it in a nutshell here, but it's way more profound than that. Okay, he has a famous book called the Niche of Lights. Okay, it's a very complex book, but basically, he's trying to tell you when you search for perfect truth. This is in the Quran, by the way, as well. Ultimately, only God is perfectly true. Only God is undoubtable. And I'm going to give you, for instance, I'm giving you a punch now, but it's not well explained. Let me explain it to you, okay? Let me explain it to you. We all talk about truth, right? Descartes was looking for this thing called truth. He was clawing for it. He was fighting. Everywhere he looked, he couldn't find this perfect truth.
He was always seeking truth.
Always, but a perfect truth. Not a truth. Perfect truth. Not something that was 100% objective. There's no subjectivity in it. You understand what are you familiar with objectivity and subjectivity?
Yeah.
So let's say if I tell you red is the most beautiful color.
That's subjective.
That's subjective. That's your opinion.
Yep.
If I tell you 1 + 1 = 2,
objective.
That's not your opinion. Who cares about what your opinion is on that? It's right or wrong. If you say 1 + 1 = 3, that's wrong, regardless of your opinion. That's objective. If a triangle has 3 corners, that's objective. If I tell you, no, man, I think triangles can also have 4 corners. No, that's impossible. Triangle has 3 angles. There's only 3. To have a 4th corner would add a 4th angle. It's true by definition. There are things that are objectively true. Okay? So look, there's a famous way to explain this. It's called the ship of Theseus. Okay, let me run it by you.
Okay.
There's a man named Theseus. He had a ship. The ship has 99 parts. Every day Theseus goes on his boat and the ship he's riding on has 99 parts. Every day he has to replace 1 part. So after day 1, he has 1 new part that was replaced. After 2 days, 2 new parts. 2 original parts were taken out and a new part was put in. The 3rd day he needs a new part again. So one of the original parts is taken out and they put him a 3rd brand new part. After 99 days, he's replaced every single original piece. But he's still sailing every day back and forth. If I ask you, where's the ship of Theseus? You're like, that's the ship of Theseus. Theseus is on a ship. He's sailing back and forth every day. Understand? But then I take all the original parts and I rebuild the ship. I put 2 ships on the sea. And I'm like, hey, SNEAKO, which one of these is his ship? You'll be like, wait a second. Now there's 2 of them. One with the original parts, but the other one, they had all the miles on it. of going back and forth every day. Which one is thesis' ship? Well, now it becomes arbitrary. It becomes a matter of how you see things. Imagine those two ships are going out on the water every day, and I'm still doing the same thing. Every day they have to replace another part. Now you have two ships that are replacing a part every day. And then I have 99 replaced parts again. I add more ship. Like, which ship is the ship of thesis? You understand what I'm trying to tell you? Is because the ship is going through change, because it's having parts replaced. Me and you will no longer agree on what's the ship of thesis. We're going to debate about it. We're going to argue about it. Where did the ship of thesis start? Where did it end? This is the philosophical conundrum. This is what's happening when they ask you, what is a woman? They want a perfect definition. There is no perfect definition. Listen carefully. There is no perfect definition if you don't have a deen. Okay? Because it's all interpretation. Which one is the ship of thesis? Well, you might decide this one is the ship of thesis. Well, who are you to decide? I think it's the other one. Your judgment is just as good as mine. Why should SNEAKO decide which one is the correct one? Now, imagine this, SNEAKO. Put that example to the side, okay? Imagine we have the divine ship of thesis. The ship of thesis is divine, meaning it's only made of one piece. It doesn't need piece. It doesn't need changing. There's no other ship like it. There will never be another ship like it, and there never was another ship like it. This ship always was like so. It doesn't go through change. Now, if we ask all of humanity, which one is the ship of thesis? We're all going to point, that's the ship of thesis. It's become objective now. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. It's not a question of opinion anymore. When we say God is one, God is eternal, God is not changing, we're saying God is objective truth. He's the sole and objective truth. It's not a question of relativity. This is in the Quran. The Quran says, after Allah, what is there true? What is there that's true? The Quran is asking you. God is Al-Haq, the truth. That's one of the names of God. Al-Haq. When people are talking about truth, they're praising Allah. You know, the Quran says, all of humanity praises Allah. All of the nature praises Allah. Everything. The bird in the sky, every human being. Because we're always talking about what is true. When you say what is true, we're talking about the one who's Al-Haq. He's the truth. Everything else is subjectively true. It's true. There's greater truths, of course. There are truths. There are falsehoods. But even the truths are dependent on the truth, Al-Haq. So it's complex. Ghazali was very sophisticated, but he found something foundational, and that was God. He made it God. He understood that God is foundational.
So basically all objective truth comes from God and everything else is subjective.
Not only that, God is the only perfectly, objectively true thing.
The unwavering.
Only God is unique in this sense. Nothing is Al-Haq except God. Things can be Haq, but nothing is Al-Haq.
Okay, I get it. Because God doesn't
Al-Haq.
It's the comparison to the cells. How 7 years ago you're a completely different objective truth because you're compromised of a completely different body. God is the only unwavering, never changing being.
Yes, that's correct. But you know what I like to liken it as, think about numbers, okay? Think about the number 3. You can't explain the number 3 without explaining the number 1. When I teach a kid the number 3, I'm like, the number 3 is 1, then 1 again, then 1 more time. That's 3. The number 2 is like the number 1, but you have to repeat it 1 more time. Every number is referencing the number 1. If I tell you, okay, what's 0.5 mean? 0.5,
half of 1.
Take a 1, cut it in half, that's 0.1.
Whoa.
0.5.
That is the best argument I've ever heard for Tawheed.
Exactly.
For God is 1. Because, okay, I get it.
But what I'm trying to tell you is, look, the whole world, like all the numbers are screaming 1. All the numbers are talking to you. Give me a number. 29. 29 is referring to 1.
29, 1. Yeah, okay.
29 is nothing without the number 1.
So are you saying that Islam is mathematical?
Not necessarily. Math is look, it's not necessarily mathematical. Math, I believe existence is information. Okay, it's a little bit complicated, but I'm telling you, like every number screams one. The number 100. You know what the number? Try to explain to somebody what the number 100 is. You're gonna be like, well, it's 50 and 50. Okay, what's 50? What? Explain me 50. 50 is like 25 and 20. What's 25? Well, 25 is like 1 plus 24. Well, wait. You have to refer to 1 eventually. When you have to take it all the way down to 1.
Okay, I like
The whole universe is screaming. Like all the numbers are screaming 1. The Quran says, look, everything in existence is praising Allah.
And zero, if you argue that it starts with zero, zero is the absence of 1.
Zero is still telling you, imagine there was no 1. It's still a reference to 1. Everything is a reference to 1. All of existence is Ghazali showed us, all of existence is screaming God. It's praising God. This is in the Quran as well, okay? This is in the Quran. The Quran says, look, all of humanity, everybody, all the creatures of the world, all the universe is praising God. Every number is telling you about 1. Look, you know what? When I praise, if I go on my YouTube channel, I start talking about SNEAKO. I'm praising SNEAKO. I'm telling you about SNEAKO. Every number is telling you about the number 1. Every mathematical equation is telling you about Allah, because Allah is the Ahad. He's represented by the 1. Everything is screaming Allah all the time. Now, some people can't hear it. You can get into a state of mind where that's all you can hear. Okay. Now, there's another really interesting verse in the Quran. Okay, Ghazali was a brilliant guy, but I think a lot of people misunderstand him. Okay, misunderstand. Sometimes he says things that's kind of scary, but he's saying something most of the time incredibly brilliant. Okay, look, there's a verse in the Quran. It says, look, the Quran says, if we brought the Quran down to this mountain here, this mountain, you would see the mountain crushed, humbled, humiliated, in humility, in a state of humility. If the Quran came down to the mountain, and the mountain understood the Quran, it would be crushed.
Islam is too deep.
It would be in a humble state, in a state of humility. But a mountain is like the unshakable, unmovable thing. Like you can crash your car into a mountain, you can nuke a mountain. Like it's this unbelievably hard, difficult, impossible thing to maneuver, right? You can't move a mountain, right? But you're just bone, you're just flesh, right? What happens when the Quran comes to you? Well, you're going to find yourself in a humble state. You're going to find yourself crushed. But that's what Ghazali was saying. Like, if you eliminate the self, the I, because it's La ilaha illallah. La ilaha, don't forget, it's something Muslims miss. Atheism and Islam is very close. Atheism and Islam, look, nobody disbelieves in gods more than Muslims. A real Muslim who understands Islam, he doesn't believe in any God. He doesn't believe in this God, Zeus, Apollo. We don't believe in any of that. We think you can scream their name as much as you want. We think you can praise them. It's useless. The Quran says they can't harm you. They can't benefit you. We believe in none of these gods. Allah. La ilaha. There are no gods. None of these gods.
Except.
None of them. Allah. Now, these deities, there are deities and there are, how do I say it? Look, there are imagined deities in our minds.
But they're not worthy of worship.
They're not, it's not only they're not worthy of worship, they don't exist. There's only one God. Yes, we agree with that. Okay,
so what about things like Baal or Moloch, these gods that they sacrifice to? Do these deities not exist?
No, they don't exist.
Shaitan doesn't exist?
No, Shaitan's not a deity.
Some people worship Shaitan. Doesn't
make him a deity? He's not a deity. Shaitan exists, yes, but he's not a deity. There's only one God. Shaitan is not a god. He's not a deity. No,
I'm trying to differentiate God from deities, things that are not worthy of worship. But because you said it can't harm or
No,
benefit
no,
you.
no, no. Nobody's worthy of worship, right? Nobody.
Yeah.
Shaitan especially, okay? But he's not divine. Shaitan is not divine.
How do you define divinity?
Divinity means you're Allah, you're God.
Okay.
If you're divine, you're Allah. Nobody has any share in divinity. Nobody's partly divine. All divinity is with God, all of it. All of it. There's nobody who's divine.
Okay, so when
You might be thinking supernatural. You might be thinking supernatural.
yeah, I was going to ask when people do, because the Quran does acknowledge that people can do black magic and can worship evil things. Is
Yes,
that
but that's not divinity.
So what is that? Supernatural.
Well, the supernatural is something outside what we identify as nature. Okay, so the patterns and irregularities you see in nature, that's a very deep question. What is nature? Okay, nature is something not touched by man. So if I show you this glass right here, nature didn't produce this. This is man's intervention. So magic is something man intervenes. It's not natural. Look, that water bottle you just drank, man had to intervene to create that. Correct?
Okay.
If man didn't exist, that water bottle wouldn't exist. Right?
True. Yeah.
So everything that's not dependent on man, that exists without man, that's what we call natural.
Okay.
Look, did man make the clouds? No. That's natural. Everything that's not natural had human intervention in its creation. You understand?
Yeah, I get it.
So everything outside a human creation is natural. Now, if humans do, if humans, let's say, I made a desk or I made a computer, that's artificial. Man intervened. It's man's creation. It's not a perfect definition, okay, but it's a good working definition because we'd have to go far deeper in this subject. But look, that river, it's not man-made, it's natural. Men can also dig a hole, fill it with water, and call it a river, and it's not a natural river. It's an artificial river. Okay? Anything that's not created by man out there in the world, it's natural. If I take sugar and I refine it, that's not natural sugar no more. It's refined sugar. We took something that was natural in the world, we refined it, and now it's refined sugar. Okay? So look, basically what I'm trying to tell you is how every number screams the number one, all of existence screams the praise of God. The Quran says, look, if we brought this Quran down to the mountain would disintegrate. Now, when I bring the Quran down to you, imagine your body disintegrated. Think about this for a second, okay? Inside you, there's a point of awareness. Leibniz said it beautifully, okay? Imagine I was really, really tiny and I was walking around inside your brain, okay? Think about this for a second, SNEAKO. It's a thought experiment for you. I'm walking around inside your brain and I see neurons firing, I see blood pumping, I see veins, I see arteries, I see all sorts of chemical states. I see dopamine, I see all sorts of chemicals, but I don't see your thoughts, SNEAKO. You're thinking things, you're deciding. I don't see any of that. All I see is machinery. I don't see the stuff of your mind. I see your brain, but I don't see your mind. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now the Quran is saying, look, destroy all that. Destroy your body. Imagine your body was disintegrated. That thing that's inside you, that inner state that you have, that inner state of awareness, what is it? It's still there. There's something beyond the body. Okay, now we say, the Quran says, Adam was formed, Allah formed Adam from clay, and then he breathed into him his ruh. His created something, okay? This thing we have inside us, I can cut you open, I won't see it. It's not subject to this world. You know, in science, they call this the hard problem of consciousness. They say, look, the easy problem is the machinery, the brain. The hard problem is that you have a mind, but I can't see your mind. If the scientist opens your mind, he'll never see your thoughts. Like, for instance, let's say you picture an apple. Can you picture an apple in your mind right now?
Yep.
If I open your mind, am I going to see an apple?
Nope.
What's the proof you pictured an apple? That's the hard problem of consciousness. That's what all the scientists say. We can't prove it, but we believe SNEAKO when he says he pictures an apple. You know why? The scientist himself can picture an apple. He's he's exposed to the same miracle. You know, there's a guy named Thomas Huxley, okay, they called him Darwin's bulldog. He was a staunch defender of Darwinism, okay? That's why they called him the bulldog of Darwin. Thomas Huxley.
Is he Jewish?
Thomas Huxley.
No, he's not.
No, I'm not sure. I don't know. Thomas Huxley said this. He said, look, when it comes to the hard problem of consciousness, the mind, he says, I'll give you an analogy. He's going to give you an analogy to tell you how mind-bogglingly incredible this is. He's saying it's like if I took a lamp, rubbed the lamp, and a magic genie came out. This is Darwin's bulldog. He's saying, look, how is it possible the brain and the mind can exist? How is it possible? Because we have no logical proof of the mind and no scientific proof. The only reason I know you have a mind, SNEAKO, is because I have one. I have a direct experience with the mind. I didn't see your mind, SNEAKO. I didn't open up your head and hear your thoughts and see the apple that you told me you supposedly experienced. I didn't see any of that. I'm taking your word for it. You know why I'm taking your word for it? Because I also have the same experience. I can also picture an apple in my mind. So what is it that's happening within us, this ruh that was given to us? If you disintegrate, if you imagine yourself without a body, for instance, there's still a something within us. And this something is not found in the dunya. It's not found in the world. It's not discovered by science. They can't put it in a test tube. They can't measure it. They can't hold it. They can't see it. They can't weigh it. They can't do anything to it. But they also cannot deny it. Every scientist is going to be like, hey, I know about this thing you're talking about because, you know, there's a famous atheist philosopher. His name was Daniel Dennett. He just passed recently, actually. And he wrote a book called The Mind Explained. And he basically said, look, your mind doesn't exist. It's all an illusion. But philosophers crushed him. Okay, he was humiliated by this book. Because we're like, if you don't have a mind, who's under the illusion? Can you trick a rock? SNEAKO, can you trick a rock?
Can't do that.
A rock doesn't have a mind, right?
No.
For me to be under an illusion, I'd have to have a mind. How could you trick a mind that doesn't exist? He fell into like a trap after trap. Like the philosophers criticized him so badly. He was denying his own mind. Think about it. He wrote a book. He had to use his mind to write a book about his mind. And he said, my mind doesn't exist. You know, in the Quran, it tells us, if you deny Allah, you deny yourself. You denied your connection. Look, the fitrah within us connects us to the other world. There's a world within us. Look, you know what Allah says in the Quran? Says that when you sleep, Allah takes your soul. When you sleep, Allah takes your soul. Where do you go when you sleep? You go into another world. Allah shows you every night when you go to sleep, it's like a little death. You know, the Muslim, when he goes to sleep, he's practicing death. He goes to sleep and he's going to go into another world. Now, if you're a bad guy, SNEAKO, you're probably going to have a lot of bad dreams. It's going to be a warning for you. Don't go to hell. You know, don't do a lot of bad things. Your deep inner conscious is going to tell you, look, I'm on the wrong path. You have a fitrah, don't forget. Of course, we have revelation. We have a revealed religion, but we also have our natural religion. It's in us. That's why the Quran calls itself the reminder. It's reminding you of something, SNEAKO. You already know something about Allah. The Quran is reminding you. The Quran is telling you, look, when you sleep, Allah takes your soul and Allah returns your soul back to you. And some of the people, He doesn't return their soul. They died. They went on to the next world and they're there. Now look, what's the proof of that? Well, guess what, SNEAKO? Every night you go to sleep, you go into another world. And you can't explain it, and neither can any scientist. And when remember we talked about earlier, when you're dreaming, you don't know you're dreaming. And you only believe you're dreaming because you woke up in this world. But every time you wake up in a world, you have the same experience you're having now. You have a history. You think you ate breakfast. You think you grew up. Let's say you wake up. Let's say you have a dream tomorrow that you're 60 years old. Okay, tonight you go to bed. You have a dream that you're 60 years old. Well, you're sleeping and you wake up and you're 60 years old. In your mind, you've lived 60 years in this dream. For you, you're 60 years old now. You didn't just pop into existence. You think you had a childhood and adulthood. You were married. You had a job, and now you're 60, and whatever you're doing in your dream. What I'm trying to tell you is the Quran is telling you, look, every night you die, and every night you're in another world. And then I return you back to this world, and you continue your tests in this world. But every day God is giving you a preview. Because when a Muslim sleeps, it's like a little death. And when he wakes up, he's supposed to practice the resurrection. Say, you praise God for resurrecting you again. It's a test. It's a practice. It's a drill. Every day you sleep, every day you wake up. And you know what? I'm happy to go to sleep. When I'm tired, SNEAKO, I want to go to sleep. When the time comes, I'm going to be happy to die, SNEAKO. It's going to be time for me to go. Like I like to sleep, I don't fight to sleep at one point. Yeah, I want to stay up late sometimes, but sometimes, I know it's time for me to go. I know it's time for me to get under those covers, and it's time for me to practice the death. And I go into death, and again, I know when I die in this world, I'm going to wake up in another. That's what the Quran tells us. Every day, Allah takes your soul. This thing that you have within you, no scientist can explain. That's why when the Quran says, look, if the Quran came to the mountain, it would crush that mountain. Well, if it came to you, why haven't you found what's inside already? Why hasn't it crushed your body yet? Why haven't you understood that there's something within you? Because if you crush the body, this is what we call fana in Islam. Like they call it annihilation. It's a very controversial topic, because think about it. Muslims, they're supposed to learn how to wash their hands, do wudu, pray. But then after that's fiqh. From fiqh, you go to tasawwuf. Okay, now that you learn how to pray, you have to tackle the diseases of the heart. It's called tasawwuf. Jealousy, envy, anger, being a miserly, etc. Like all the bad things that could live in the human heart. Now, why do we tackle all the bad things that live in the human heart? Because you're supposed to be a reflection of God. There's verses in the Quran that talks about Allah as the light, right? You ever heard these verses? Allah is the light. Allah calls himself the light in the Quran. And the Quran talks about how the light reflects off the lamp. You have a lamp and Allah reflects off the light of the lamp. Now, Ghazali writes a lot about that, but the believer's heart, when it's pure, you see a lot of good in him, right? He's charitable. Well, Allah is charitable. He's kind. Well, Allah is kind. He's merciful. Well, Allah is merciful. He's showing you the things that you expect from God. If somebody never lies to me, he reminds me of Allah. You know why? Because Allah never lies. You understand? Now, let's say every time I turn my back, you backstab me. Every time I'm not looking, you steal money from me. Every time I'm not around, you do bad things to my business or whatever. Well, you don't remind me of God, actually. You remind me of bad things. You remind me of shaitan. You don't reflect the light of Allah. You understand? So there's stages of Islam where a person goes, okay, you're praying every day, but then you want to do tasawwuf. What's tasawwuf? You want to learn how to reflect the good things. Why? Because you're a reflection of Allah. A good Muslim is supposed to remind me of Allah. You understand? That's why I always say, like, Muslims sometimes we're a bad example about Islam. We don't remind people about God. We remind people about politics and fighting and disaster. And when somebody sees a Muslim, he should be reminded about Allah, the good things. He's trustworthy, he's friendly, he's kind, he's patient, all the things you would expect from God. Okay? Then higher than this, you start to contemplate God at a higher level. And this is what Ghazali did. There's something within us. You start contemplating existence. You start thinking how God created the universe, determinism, which we didn't get into today, but this is a very important topic for the future. And you start contemplating, how come I have a brain, but my mind escapes physicality? What is this thing in me that God breathed into Adam? What is it? We contemplate it, we reflect on it. If my body was dissolved, what would it be? What would be left? This is something Avicenna speculated. He gave an interesting thought experiment called the hanging man. He says, imagine a hanging man, okay? This hanging man, he can't smell, he can't see, he can't hear, he can't touch anything. He's completely suspended. He has no awareness of his body. Is there still something, Avicenna said? Well, you'd have to say yes. There's this inner stuff we have inside us. Remember, I was telling you earlier to think about an apple, and you were thinking about an apple. Okay, take out the apple. What was thinking about the apple? There's this thing called mind. There's this thing called consciousness. There's this thing that science, physics, logic cannot grab. Cannot put it in a test tube. We can't weigh it. We're completely stumped about it. They call it the hard problem, the impossible problem. But you have a first-hand experience of it. You know it directly. This is what Ghazali is ultimately saying. You have this connection to something miraculous, the sign of Allah, the miracle of Allah that He put within you. And it's actually not within. You can't even say it's within, because your whole concept of in and out comes from it. Your entire, all the ideas in your mind, in, out, up, down, it's all within this one thing. Okay, this one thing that is indescribable, only known because me and you both have it. Every human being has it. One thinker called it the beetle in the box. Okay, imagine beetles don't exist in the world. I have a box, and inside my box, I could see a beetle. And you have a box, nobody can look in your box, okay? You open up the box, and you see a beetle. Now, there are no beetles in the world. Only I have a beetle in my box, you have a beetle in your box. Every human being has a beetle in the box. And I describe the beetle to you, you describe it to me, and we're like, hey, I have one too. Yeah, I have the same thing. But there's no beetles in the world. This one thing, this beetle in the box, is how they were describing the mind. There's this mind within us, or this point of awareness, that's outside the reach of science, logic. It's a sign from Allah. When you go to sleep, what happens with this thing within you? Where does it go? Well, you go into another world all the time. So Ghazali was very profound on this, because he was saying if you eliminate all things, even the contents of consciousness, you're left with this one eternal, undeniable truth. You can't deny it because it's known directly. You're having a direct experience of it. You're not using logic. You're not using your senses. You're not trusting your eyes, your hearing. Ghazali was very big on the hierarchy of knowledge. Okay, so this is another long topic. I'll let you chime in. What do you think about all this? I mean, I know I threw a lot at you.
Yeah, I was wondering what you dream about. You made me think about how sleep is the cousin of death, and how we do go to a different world. That was the question that got me into philosophy in the first place, was where do we actually go when we die? Because you're not aware. Mm-hmm. So where because your mind, when you're awake, is proof of existence and where we are. So if you are asleep and it's not what you're seeing and what you're around and what you're touching and feeling in the real world, where exactly do you go? And I didn't know an answer to this question before, and then I started looking into philosophy. But I'm wondering, what do you dream about specifically? Because my dreams recently have been extremely vivid, and I think it does say a lot about you. And I've been researching into Jung and how the subconscious mind can tell a lot about what you're really thinking when you're awake. The other world you go to when you dream, that reveals a lot of the truths about this world that we're not aware of.
Well, think about this. When you're dreaming, you have an avatar. Okay, let's call it an avatar, right? You're something in the dream, right? You're SNEAKO, you're maybe a 55-year-old man, maybe you're young, maybe you're, I don't know, you could be anything, right? When you're dreaming, yes or no? Like, whatever. When you're having a dream, it's like any world, right? You're in any world. Mm-hmm. In that dream, you have consensus. So let's say, for instance, I'm having a dream that I'm podcasting with SNEAKO. SNEAKO's not like, hey man, you're dreaming, wake up, man. Well, I'm not even here. No, you're giving me consensus. You're playing along with my dream. It could be that I go to sleep tonight and I have a dream that I'm podcasting with SNEAKO, and SNEAKO's not telling me it's a dream. He's cooperating with me. To him, he's also living this exact world. He thinks this world is real. It's 100% real. We have a history. Like, you could dream about anything. And this, basically, what I'm trying to tell you is you can't tell the difference between now and a dream. Philosophers, we can't tell the difference. No philosopher has ever come up with the answer of how do you know you're not dreaming. No philosopher. The first time I heard that, I laughed at it. I think that's a ridiculous question. Of course we know we're not dreaming. Every time I gave an answer, I got shut down. Because in every dream, you have continuity and you have consensus. Meaning, continuity means if I'm dreaming that I'm having a podcast, well, I'm assuming in the dream that I had a breakfast this morning, I woke up, I had my coffee, I did my routine. It's all in my memory, even though it never happened. My lunch is digesting in my stomach, even though I never ate it. The dream started right now. But guess what? If in my dream I ate a burger for lunch, there's a burger in my stomach, but I never ate the burger. It's just the dream started now. There's a digested burger. The whole thing is set up perfectly that the dream starts now, and I have memories of a childhood that it never happened. Mm-hmm. And everything is cooperating with my dream. Everything is telling me, hey, the world around you is real. And then in the dream ends. My avatar goes poof. But I don't say, oh, I died, I don't exist, I went into nothingness. No, I wake up in another world. Mm-hmm. And I wake up in another world. So the Quran is telling us, look, this is all practice for when you really wake up. Because in Islam, don't forget, in Islam, most people don't know this. This is the dream. This world right now you're living right now is a dream.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. When you die, you're going to wake up. Because don't forget what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. He said, die before you die. Die before you die. Think about this. The Muslim, when he goes to sleep, he's practicing dying. When he wakes up, he's practicing the resurrection. What does God tell the people on Judgment Day? He says to them, how long were you alive in this
Truly,
world?
bro.
And we say, oh, a day and a half, part of a day. We're remembering this world like a dream. Let's say you had a dream that, I don't know, you went from 5 years old to 99 years old and you were, I don't know, whatever you did in your career. That dream was just 20 minutes. But for you, that dream was a long time. In the dream, you don't feel it's 20 minutes. You understand? You could dream that you went from childhood to old age in your dream. The dream was 20 minutes, but for you, it was 70 years.
So do you exist, or does your soul exist before you were born in this world?
I believe so, yeah. I believe the Quran, that's what the Quran says, yeah.
So we've been dead a lot longer than we've been alive.
We've been dead a lot longer than we've been alive. Why do you say that?
Because if we've existed before we were born, what was that existence? How could you describe that? Because if we're dead after this life, then we're dead. What's all the time before we're born?
Time is relative. Time is relative. So there's no time. Time is a projection of the mind. That's a very complex topic, but look, we pre-existed for how long? Allahu A'lam. It could have been a microsecond. It could have been trillions of years. Actually, the question is almost meaningless because time is whatever. Look, here's the thing about time, okay? Imagine everything in the universe froze. Everything. Your thoughts, every molecule, If it froze for 1 second or 1 million years, you wouldn't know the difference. Time is a projection of the mind. So when I move this glass from one side of my hand to the other, your brain is telling you, look, the glass is here in the right hand. It's also in the left hand. How do you make sense of that? Well, it was in the right hand at one time and the left hand at another. That's how your brain makes sense of the situation. Okay, it's a very complex topic. I don't want to get too much into it because it's really take us on a huge tangent. But Kant taught us that time is a projection of the mind. Think about a movie. Okay, if I give you a movie, the whole movie's on this DVR, on this USB key. Okay, the whole movie's on it. When you watch the movie, you're watching one part at a time. The projector is giving you an illusion of time, even though the whole movie's here. The whole movie's here. But when you watch the movie, I'm like, okay, the actor jumps off a building. You're like, no, he didn't jump off a building. He's sleeping in his bed. Yeah, he's sleeping in his bed now. Later on, he's jumping off a building. Time makes sense out of both states. If there's no movement, there's no time. Okay, so if everything froze, there was no movement, ever. Time relies on movement, okay? If everything froze in the universe, including every thought, there would be no time, okay? So time is relative. Time is a very complex topic. So I can't tell you how long we existed in pre-existence. I have no idea. I don't even know if that question is valid. Okay. The Quran also alludes to that. The Quran says a day in the afterlife is like 10,000 years. A day in the afterlife is like 50,000 years. The Quran changes the value. I think it's because time is relative. Now today we know it as a scientific fact. Okay, the Quran says that time is relative, and now today Einstein proved. Don't forget. Let me tell you something, okay? Isaac Newton said time is a constant. It's the one thing that will never change. Isaac Newton, okay? A little over 100 years later, Einstein comes and disproves Isaac Newton. He proves that time is relative. Time depends on speed. Okay? Look, you know, they take two airplanes, okay? Two atomic clocks. And they take one on an airplane and they go around the world with it and they come back, and when they check the two atomic clocks, they were set at the same time. One of them is a second slower. Because the faster you travel, the slower time passes for you. So imagine me and you, SNEAKO, we're on planet Earth. I go in a spaceship. Look, I go in a spaceship around the moon at a very fast rate. When I come back, you're going to be an old man and I'm going to be young. And that's real physics, okay? If I go on a spaceship really, really fast, I go to around the first star and come right back, okay? The first star is 4 light years away. Imagine I travel at the speed of light. I go 4 years one way, 4 years back. When I come back, you're gonna be like dead 1,000 years ago, and I'm gonna be like 8 years older. Time passed much faster for you than for me. Time is relative. What does the Quran say about time? The Quran says a day in the next life, the afterlife, is like 10,000 years. So one day here, one day there is like 10,000 years here. Okay? One day there is like 50,000 years here. It changes the value, meaning time is relative. It's relative to your mind. Okay, so anyways, this is a very profound topic. But here's the thing. The Quran sided with Einstein, and Einstein proved it right. People don't know that, okay? A lot of people don't know this. Muslims don't know this, but Isaac Newton, one of the greatest thinkers of all time, he said, look, the one thing that will never change is the flow of time. Time is a constant. We could always trust that time flowed at the same rate. He was completely wrong. The Quran was completely right.
So why do you do MMA?
Why do I do MMA?
Yeah, why? Why MMA?
MMA or AMA?
MMA.
Like fighting?
Fighting.
MMA, fighting.
Fighting.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, like I did it for enjoyment, you know, because I was bullied, but then I really got into it, and I wanted to become a lawyer. My goal to be in life was to earn my living, was to be a lawyer. Okay, but as I really got into MMA, it was my passion. I never thought I'd make money with it. I never thought I could pay my bills with it. I never thought I could make a career with it. And then UFC started getting bigger and bigger, and we were training fighters. Now I never thought I'd be able to train a fighter to go to UFC. Then I had one fighter go in UFC, and then the team started getting more popular, bigger. We started growing. We grew exponentially. The team is a great success. It's been, I would say, 20 years. More than 20 years. I've been training fighters to go to UFC. I built a brand. I'm doing what I love. Now, when I started it, the market was really, really low. I'll tell you, Georges St. Pierre, the first fight he did in UFC, he got paid $3,000 to show and $3,000 to win. So total of $6,000. And we had trained over like 4 months for that fight. So I'm telling you, we were broke. Like I was going to school. I was like, look, I'm doing this for fun because I like the guy. He's a good guy. I want to help him and I love the sport, but I ain't going to live off $6,000 every 4 months, right? We're not going to make it like that. So I was going to school. I was getting my degree. Later on, I wanted to become a lawyer, but MMA pulled us in that direction and we started making enough to earn our living and follow our passion and do what we love.
Maybe on a bigger level, like because you're talking about how you're making me think like, okay, time is relative, trying to figure out what really matters. What's the reason that you still do it today? Why not fully invest your capabilities into philosophy or religion?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
I study a lot of religion and philosophy every day. I study thought. I study logic, science, history. That's all I do. I do training and study. And one day I'm refining my thoughts. I write notes. I have thoughts. I have outlooks that I discover. I correspond with other thinkers. I'm refining my thoughts. Later on in life, I want to write books. Later on in life. But I'm still refining my philosophies. I'm very young still. For a philosopher, I'm 44 now. It's very young for a philosopher. So I'm still refining my thoughts. I'm still... Look, my whole day is basically physical training and then mental training. Physical training, then mental training. I'm just doing that all day long.
Does the physical training help your mental training?
I think it keeps me sane because the thing is, if you just do this 8 hours a day, what I'm doing right now,
philosophers have gone crazy.
Oh yeah, of course. Because look, when you go too far, you could lose touch with reality. That's why I think people fear about philosophy, which I understand, because not everybody in Islam has to be a philosopher. That's not true. I don't agree with that. But the thing is, we don't want to tell everybody, don't do philosophy. We need our philosophers. Okay, like I remember Muhammad Hijab years ago, he was like telling me, should I do philosophy? I was like, yes, wholeheartedly. Yes, you have the mind for it. You have the gift for it. And look, mashallah, today he's a PhD. How many times did he debate?
He has multiple PhDs.
Yeah, he has multiple. He's also a philosophy PhD. Now I'll tell you something. How many times was he a great debater for the Ummah? So many times he's been an amazing debater. But we live in the age of the internet now. There's no more just telling people, look, this is what we believe. We have to tell them why we believe it. Now you want to know why we believe it, you got to get philosophical. When I say philosophical, I don't mean blind follower of Aristotle. Okay, here's the thing. Here's why Muslims think philosophy is bad. Okay, let me tell you why some Muslims think philosophy.
Before you tell me, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. I drink a lot
Go
of
for
water.
it. No worries, brother. Go for it.
Why is drinking with a jar? The bottle of glass. No, it's a bigger than other bottle. Bigger than other bottle, bro. Side note, side note, side note. I'm gonna be like that. Do what it do. We do. It is what it is. He does what he does. He does what he does. Oof. I need to study. I need to study. A lot more study about business, about philosophy, about Islam, about business, about philosophy, politics. These four things gonna make you better, bro. Islam is the philosophy. Yeah.
Philosophy in Islam.
What's that?
You were saying about philosophy in Islam.
Oh yeah. So look, there's a famous book by Ghazali. Okay, it's called The Destruction of the Philosophers. Okay, the Tahaffut Falsafa, meaning the not the destruction of philosophers. Frank Griffel says should be translated as the slip up of the philosophers. Okay, that's how Frank Griffel. He's a PhD in Islam. He says that's how it should be interpreted. Now, what is he saying? He's saying, look, Frank Griffel explains, he wrote a phenomenal book on Ghazali. He's like, look, the whole Muslim world misunderstood Ghazali. Ghazali is not saying destroy philosophy. That's not what he was saying. When he was saying the philosophers, he was referring to a group that blindly follow Aristotle. Okay, because here's what you have to remember. You had the Greek philosophers. They were very successful. You had Alexander the Great, okay? Socrates was the master of Plato. Plato was the master of Aristotle. Aristotle was the master of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great conquered the world, including the Middle East.
At a very young age.
At a very young age, and he brought. Why do you think the Bible is written in Greek? Because of Alexander the Great. He conquered the Middle East. Now they spread their philosophies. They spread Hellenistic thinking, Greek thinking. Then Christianity came. Christianity came and conquered the Middle East, conquered Rome. Okay. When Christianity conquered the Middle East, philosophy books were made forbidden. The Muslims secured the philosophy books and harbored them. People don't know this. If it
Even
wasn't
I
for the
don't know about
Muslims,
this.
and I dare anybody to challenge me on this, if it wasn't for the Muslims, you wouldn't have Aristotle today. Yeah. Why don't you guys remember that? Okay. The Muslims, it wasn't haram to read philosophy. For the Christians who just conquered Rome, because don't forget, the Greeks influenced the Europeans. The Europeans became Greco-Roman thinkers. We call it Greco-Roman. And then they converted to Christianity. Christianity conquers Rome. Now Rome is under Christian rule. All Greek thinking is haram now. Forbidden. Get this way of thinking out of here. Where did those books go? They went into Muslim hands. Now the Muslims, they were the masters of paper at the time. They were copying books. They were very academic. It was the golden age of Islam. Okay. Mm-hmm. When the Christian Europe was in the dark ages, we were in the golden ages. We were in the golden age. Science, mathematics. Don't forget, algebra, algorithm. That's all Muslim invention. The Muslims were highly scientific. Actually, I'll quote you Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson said something very accurate. He said, there was never a greater golden age before or a greater golden age after. Scientific golden age. The amount of discoveries the Muslims did in terms of science, math, and logic was never repeated ever in history, ever again. The Muslims protected philosophy, elaborated the philosophy, and we had a boom in technology, science, etc.
So he admits,
Neil deGrasse.
yeah, of course I do. So he admits that the Islamic Golden Age was was one of the most important ages for philosophy and algebra.
I wish I could play it for you right now. Not just philosophy, science. He asks on stage, he's like, why do you think 3/4 of the stars are Arabic names? Why do you think that? He's like screaming. And he got so much hate for this. But he's right. He's correct. He's
An atheist saying this.
I think he's agnostic or atheist. I'm not sure what he is. But
He's an atheist.
He's telling you, look, algebra is an Arabic word. Arabic numerals. You know the number system? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The one you grew up using? That's called Arabic numerals. Why is it called Arabic numerals? It doesn't come from Arabia. It came from India. Indians invented it. The Arabs mastered it. It's like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu doesn't come from Brazil. It came from Japan. But the Brazilians were so good at it, we call it Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The Arabs were so good with numbers. They're far better than the Romans. That we call it Arabic numerals. Till today, we call it Arabic numerals. Why do you think we call it Arabic numerals? Because the Arabs were the best at math. Now, Baghdad, people want to go to Harvard to study, right? Baghdad, at the time, was the greatest university in the world, in history. Some people say it was the first real university. People went from all over the world to study in Arabia, in the Muslim worlds. If you wanted to be a scholar, you had to go to the Muslim world. Like today, if you want to be a scholar, you got to go to the top universities somewhere in the world. The Muslims were incredible at medicine, science, math, history, everything, philosophy, etc. Now, some Muslims were considered blind followers of Aristotle. What does that mean? If Aristotle said it, it's true. Khalas, they don't question Aristotle. Now Ghazali was saying, look, guys, you can't do that. If Aristotle said it, it could be true, it could be false. We have to test it. He said we need demonstration. Okay, that was today we would say science or proof. He used the word demonstration. Okay, but I'm going to use modern day language. Okay, he said, look, you can't just say it's true because Aristotle said it. You have to prove that Aristotle is right. So you guys are blind followers of Aristotle. He called those guys philosophers. Today, philosophy means something else. Today's philosophy means somebody who formally studies logic in university or college. When Ghazali was using the word, he meant people who blindly follow Aristotle, not people who study logic. Ghazali was very well versed in logic. You know how much, logic is very important in Islam. Supremely important, okay? So Ghazali was trying to say, look, don't be a blind follower of Aristotle. That's haram, not philosophy. And the way we use it today. The study of logic is not haram. If logic is haram, why don't you make arithmetic haram? Why don't you make mathematics haram? Why don't you make calculus haram while you're at it? It's the same thing. It's logic. It's the opposite. The Quran is telling you to use logic. The Quran is constantly, there's over 300 verses in the Quran that are asking you to think and use your reason. There's over 300 verses in the Quran that ask you to think deeply, reflect, or use your reason.
I think it's a certain group of Muslims that don't want to have to challenge their own point of view. So instead of thinking deeply, they just say everything is haram. Crypto, they don't get it, so now it's forbidden.
Let me tell you a little secret, okay?
Okay.
If Muslims don't grow wings and start using in logic, if they don't grow wings, if they don't get their black belt in logic soon, they won't survive in this age of dawah. Because now it's all about why. See, I'm explaining to you today why the Quran says the whole world praises Allah. The whole universe. I'm explaining to you, it's like how every number praises the number one.
I love that analogy.
It's a powerful analogy. Yeah, it's a powerful, even though you have to remember, no analogy is perfect. Every analogy breaks down somewhere, okay? Because if I say SNEAKO is like SNEAKO, well, that's not an analogy. If I say SNEAKO is like a computer, well, now I'm making an analogy. I'm saying, look, SNEAKO is not a computer. He's like a computer. Here's what he has in common with a computer. I'm not saying Allah is math. I'm not saying Allah is numbers. Okay, that's very important. I'm giving a likeness, something that's similar in a relationship, because analogies by definition break sooner or later. Okay. If I say SNEAKO is SNEAKO, that's not an analogy. If I say SNEAKO is like a computer, that's an analogy. There are similarities between SNEAKO and the computer, and there are differences. What I'm telling you is, like how every number screams the number one is a reference to the number one, that's how all of creation praises God, okay, in a similar fashion. I'm telling you, Muslims need to start thinking at that level if they're going to survive in the dawah scene. Because a lot of people tell me, oh, they really enjoy my dawah, but I'm not a full-time in dawah. But I'm telling you, the only reason I have a up on most of you, on some of you, is because I studied logic and I studied the Muslim thinkers. And believe me, they had very profound discussions about existence and God. The Muslims forgot. Look, the Muslims used to be far more brilliant. Okay, then they got chopped down by the Mongols. The Mongols came and really did a number on us. Okay, it was like our Holocaust. Okay. After that, the Muslims started adopting Christian attitudes. That look, we fell in love. We started studying the dunya so much. We started mastering the dunya so much. Maybe God sent Genghis Khan to us as a punishment. Like that, they started thinking like this. No more of this dunya studying and all that. Okay, so they had like a remorse. Because the Mongols really was a major fitna, a major challenge to the Muslim. Okay, like literally the Muslims were being eradicated off the face of the earth. People at that time thought it was the end of the world.
In the year like 1200. This is during the Genghis Khan's rule.
Yes.
Like 1200.
Genghis Khan actually, he referred to himself as the punishment of God to the Muslims. He understood Muslim thought. Because in Islam, look, Genghis Khan can't kill me unless Allah gives him authority to. So he could be interpreted as our punishment. He could, or our fitna, our challenge. Okay, our challenge to us. Now, Genghis Khan, he interpreted it as I'm your punishment from God, because you guys were bad. Because no man could do this to you unless Allah, because he understood our religion. He had advisors who explained to him our religion. Now, don't forget another interesting thing. What stopped the Mongols? The Mongols would have took over the entire world. People don't know this, but the Mongols converted to Islam. A golden horde converts to Islam. Now there's infighting. Not Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan never lost a battle. His grandchildren, all the way to Hulagu Khan. Anyways, there's a lot of interesting history between the Muslims and the Mongols. Actually, there's a American who did a great job on this. His name is Carlin something. He did a phenomenal job. You have to listen to
George
his work.
Carlin, the comedian?
He did a phenomenal work on the, I think, is it him?
Yeah, George Carlin.
He did a really nice piece on the Mongols and Muslims. Well, let me see. Is it him? No, not this guy. No, I'm sorry. No, not this guy. No.
Dan Carlin.
Dan Carlin. That sounds more familiar. I haven't heard it in years. Hardcore history, yes. Wrath of Khans, guys, you have to listen to this. Muslims, you have to listen to this. It's really entertaining. It's like he has a voice. He puts the emotions behind it. He gives you like incredible nuggets of history. It's really, really impressive. I really highly recommend it. It's a 3-part piece. Really amazing. So, anyways, like I was saying, I think the best Dawis in the future are going to be they're going to have a background in philosophy. I think so.
To keep up with the pace of the internet and social media, for sure.
You know, there's so much about Islam that, like, people don't even. The Quran is so deterministic. The atheist believes in determinism, and the Muslim believes in determinism. We both believe in the same thing. Like, I'm telling you something. There's not a lot of difference between atheism and Islam. Except we believe there's one God you can't doubt. He's obvious.
It's 0 versus 1.
You could say it that way, yeah.
And then Christianity is 3.
Christianity, well, you can interpret it as 3 gods, you know, because they're going to say, no, he's 1 in essence, 3 in persons. Because here's the thing, okay? There's more to it. If you read the Quran, the Quran says, if Allah wanted a son, he could have any son. It's not logically impossible. It's just not befitting to Allah. We don't say Allah has a son, but me personally, I think like Ghazali. I think Allah can do anything. And even what's illogical, Allah can do. Allah could do anything. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Allah has a son, astaghfirullah, I would never say that. Mm-hmm. I don't believe Jesus is the son of God, no way. That's stuff that the pagans used to say. So-and-so is the son of God, okay? They're copying the pagans, etc.
So is that why you think Islam and Christianity, I mean atheism, are closer because it's 0 and 1? And Christianity is 3, and then Judaism is like 1.333333 with interest percent.
Well, Judaism moved from, because Judaism, if you study Judaism, they moved from polytheism to monotheism, because if you read their interpretations, They say there are other gods. We just don't believe in these. We don't have a covenant with these gods. Early rabbis didn't deny the God of Zeus. They just said we have a covenant with Yahweh. And then later on it evolved to no, there's only Yahweh. The other gods don't exist. Okay, so there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of debate on that because they're saying some Jews believe no, the Jews of old believed there were other gods, but we don't have a covenant with them. We have a covenant with this God. We have to be loyal to this God. So were they monotheists? I believe so, but it's not a clear-cut monotheism. But in that sense, if you agree with the Jews who say no, there was always just one God, they denied the other gods, then they're exactly like us.
We should do one in the future about the subjects today that you didn't want to cover, like time, mathematics, and there was another one. Who do you think wins this weekend? Yeah, there's so much more. There's so much more. But
there's so many topics.
John Jones.
Next time we should talk about determinism. I think next time when we have more time, we'll chill. We'll talk about.
Today was a lot about free will, or no, not really.
No. Today wasn't free will. Logic. Today we talked more about the mind. The mind. But I'll tell you something. Determinism is something so important. I think Muslims have to master. Determinism is so important. I don't think you can understand the Quran without understanding determinism. I know it's sad to say because people are going to be like, no, what is he talking about? No, I'm telling you guys. I'll tell you something. What's the first thing in our tradition that Allah created? It's the pen. What is the pen? The pen is going to write everything that happens from now till Judgment Day. So everything is already written. We say everything is maktub. Everything is written. It's qadar Allah. It's part. You can't be a Muslim without believing qadar Allah. That everything is predestined. And one day we're going to have to talk about, look, okay, that's what the Quran claims. How do we know it logically? Everything the Quran says, we have to have a logic to understand why the Quran says that. Inshallah, we'll do a nice episode on that. We'll talk about determinism. And let me tell you something. Even the atheists will say, we agree with determinism.
Have you converted a lot of people?
Well, I've had a lot of friends convert to Islam, sure. Definitely.
MashaAllah.
Who wins this weekend, John Jones or Stipe?
Stipe hasn't fought in 3 years. I trained with John Jones many years ago. I'll tell you something, man.
I didn't know that.
He's a winner. Okay? He's a winner. He's been training his entire life. You could throw him off a building and he'll still get up and wrestle. Like he's tough. I'm telling you, he's tough. He's motivated. Like you could wake him up at 4 a.m. And he could be in a burning building. And you shoot a double leg on him, he's gonna sprawl. He's gonna take your back. Like he's trained to fight from a young child. Like it's a deep part of his psyche. I don't think Miocic has that level of thinking and training in him, lifelong dedication. Because like John Jones comes from a family of wrestlers, and he grew up every year in summer camp training wrestling. Like kids went to the pool, the lake. Yeah, he did some of that stuff, but he was always every summer in wrestling camp. Like he's bred to win. He's gonna beat Miocic. And Miocic's been out 3 years. His last fight, he got KO'd. I think he might be just coming in motivated for a check. I think John is going to run through him. Like I think John is just head and shoulders above.
I agree. It seems like a bit of a mismatch. But why is the fight not against Aspinall?
That's the one guy I think John has to worry about, because Aspinall is too big, too strong, too fast, too well trained. Aspinall also has been doing jiu-jitsu and striking since he's born. He's just younger, bigger. And, I would say his wrestling is very dangerous. His grappling, his striking. I mean, Aspinall is very dangerous. I still think John has a fighting chance against Aspinall. But that's a hard fight, especially late in John's career. Aspinall is in his prime. Aspinall, man, nobody could do one round with the man. It's a highly dangerous fight. And why does John need to risk it all for a guy like that? It doesn't make sense. Does he really need... He has a payday with Miocic.
Yeah.
And he has a fight that he might not win with Aspinall.
So he's avoiding. You think
it doesn't
John
make
Jones,
sense. He should be fighting Aspinall. Technically, he should be fighting Aspinall. Technically,
John Jones is going to avoid it for the rest of his career.
I think so. I don't think he ever steps in the octagon with Aspinall.
Would you if you were John Jones?
No. Why? Why does he need to? I mean, he's made his money. He's proved it. Let Aspinall do what he did. Because look, here's the thing: we all get slower. We all get older. We all get have projects in life. We want to move on with our life. We're not going to be in the cage forever. It's not easy to live, as champion, because you have to defend the title 2-3 times a year. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of press. People think they just get in the cage. No. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot going on, and he's holding up the division. He has to fight. There's so much drama. Everybody's always talking to you about defending your title. Like, it's so much of your life. Look, I lived it. That 9 years we lived as champions, it was very busy. Let me tell you, I had barely time for my family. Like I had to one point, I told George to retire on the octagon. I told him, look, retire right now. Do it right now. Pull the plug. We can change our mind later, but do it right now. Retire. He's like, okay, I'll do it. Because he was on the fence whether he should retire or not. It was a difficult time for him mentally because he wants to live his life. Also, people think, oh, you just get up and train for 6 weeks and work for a fight, defend your title. It's not that easy. Okay, it's not that easy. It's a lot of time and energy. It's difficult, and you have to put a lot of your life on pause. And you need a break from it for a while. So I think John is living life. He has a good fight for him. He takes it. I think he beats Miocic easily. It's a big payday for him. It's probably a few $1 million at least, minimum. Why fight Aspinall? Let Aspinall. Don't forget, John Jones went up to heavyweight. John Jones can go back to 205.
Right.
Aspinall cannot come down to 205. Why would you fight the most dangerous heavyweight in history? I think Aspinall is going to be the most dangerous heavyweight in history. Why would you fight that guy in his prime and your weight class above, and that guy can scramble your brains, take away your health? Like, I just don't think it makes any logical sense. There's no need for it. If Aspinall wants to be as great as John, let him do what John did. He doesn't have to fight John.
He's not that old.
He could just do what John did and do it better. And he might. He's a very talented man.
Isn't Pereira older than John Jones, which doesn't make sense based on how long they've been in the UFC? John Jones isn't that old.
John is the youngest champion ever. Don't forget.
22.
Let me look up John.
22.
Yeah, he was 22, but how old is he now?
He's 36.
I mean, he's 36. Look, it's not how old you are per se, it's how many miles you have on you. Okay? And I don't think John is physically that old. I don't think he's physically that old. I think he could keep doing it for another 10 years. He's that talented. However, does he want to?
I don't think so.
Does he need another fight? I'm sure he's making money many ways with his brand, with his name. He's making money. I'm sure he's making millions a year just without fighting. Why does he got to get in the cage, risk it all, risk his chin, risk his health? Every time you go in there, man, you might get knocked out, laid out.
What's the mentality of a champion?
I think a champion is ready to adapt to anything. No matter what's going on, he's always finding a way to win. Always thinking of a way to win. So they never despair. They never think, oh, you know what? It's not possible to win. They never have that kind of thought. If there's 1 second left, they're trying to win. Whether they're ahead or not, they're trying to win. Like, winning is the only objective. So I really feel like John has that more than Miocic. Not that Miocic wasn't great. Miocic was fantastic. Some people call him the greatest heavyweight of all time. I personally don't. I don't think he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think it's either Aspinall or John Jones, but depending on what Aspinall does in the rest of his career, which I think he will be the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think Aspinall could beat Ngannou. I used to say Ngannou was the greatest heavyweight of all time. Now I've reconsidered. I think it's Tom Aspinall. I think he's going to prove it. And I think John is a smart guy, man. He's going to make a few million this weekend. He's going to ride off into the sunset and come back when it's worth it. Or he's going to come back to 205. John is a very smart guy. He's not a dumb guy at all. And he's not going to be bullied into taking a fight he doesn't need to take a fight. Mm-hmm. Everybody's trying to bully him to fight Aspinall. I get it. It's the fight everybody wants to see, but John doesn't need it.
Are you going to be there? Are you going to come to NYC?
No. I'm not booked on that one.
You'd like to stay
is it in Vegas?
No, it's in New York.
Oh, it's in New York?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's in New York.
No, I didn't know that. If I knew it was in New York, I might have popped in. But the thing is, I'm at so many shows. It's good to have a weekend at home. Mm-hmm. So I do plenty of shows throughout the year. So for me, when I have a weekend at home with the family, it's a good time for me.
When could we do this again about determinism? I'm looking at the clock. This is longer than a Joe Rogan podcast. We went almost 4 hours.
Is it? No way.
We're almost at 4 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't. Time flies, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man. We could do it again, inshallah. We'll be in touch.
What did you think about Joe Rogan podcast? I haven't listened to your appearances.
Oh, I did two appearances. One of them was super controversial and went crazy viral because we talked about science and logic and philosophy. I think that the topics we touched on were too profound, so a lot of people were like, it doesn't make sense. But believe me when I tell you, everything I said on that podcast is philosophically sound. And I challenge any PhD to revise that and have a discussion with me, because everything I brought up is like bedrock philosophy. We talked about the problem of induction, but people don't understand the problem of induction, and I get it because it's a very, very niche topic. It's not something you learn in any other science. But in philosophy, you learn something called the problem of induction. And here's the thing: these are things that if you don't understand, I don't think you can understand the Quran. Certain things about the Quran is referring to the problem of induction. God is actually, the Quran is asking you to reflect on the patterns and irregularities we see in nature. And that's a very profound topic. And Ghazali did it. He wrote about it. Al-Ashiri wrote about it. So many great thinkers, Muslim thinkers, wrote about it. But today, the Muslims don't talk about it no more. They're not thinking at that level. And it's, for me, I find it sad.
I've never even heard. I'd never heard induction before until just now. So there's a lot more.
Right. So, yeah, no, it's not a famous word. It's not a well-known word in everyday language, but it's definitely a word we use in philosophy. Look, induction just means that you learned it by. Okay, how can I explain to you? Induction means you went from a small sample and then you made a generalization. So, for instance, let's say I say all frogs can swim. Well, how do you know all frogs can swim? Have you seen every frog in all the world, in all histories? You haven't observed the future frogs. You know, there's going to be frogs 1,000 years from now. Have you seen those frogs? Do they swim? Well, no, I didn't see all the frogs in all the world that ever lived. But I saw a bunch of frogs in this pond and they could all swim. A friend from Australia wrote me a letter saying the frogs that he saw in his pond can swim. And my friend from the US wrote me a letter saying, I networked. I asked a bunch of scientists around the world, hey, the frogs in your country, do they swim? Yes. So now I have such a good sample. And we've networked so much together, we're ready to say that all frogs swim. That's how you know something by induction. You have a sample. You don't have a perfect sample. And then you make a generalization. That's something called induction. That's a logical induction. You use the type of logic that we call induction. Okay, so we used to believe, so induction can be wrong, SNEAKO. So for instance, we used to believe that all flamingos were pink. All scientists in the world thought flamingos are pink. And then we went to, I think it was Australia, and the flamingos there are not pink. You know why the flamingos are pink in our side of the world? It's the food that they eat. Flamingos are not naturally pink. So we had a sample, we made a generalization, and we were wrong. Now, sometimes generalizations are true, and sometimes they're wrong, but they're generalizations. Future events can disprove an inductive belief. So an inductive belief is never as strong as a deductive belief. A deductive belief is when you go from something general to specific. Okay, so let's say I say the most classic example. If I tell you, SNEAKO, all men are mortal, and I tell you, Aristotle is a man, therefore Aristotle is mortal. If it's true that all men are mortal, and Aristotle belongs to this category of men, all men are mortal, Aristotle is a man, therefore Aristotle has to be mortal. That's deduction. That has to be true. If premise 1 is true and premise 2 is true, the conclusion is certain. If it's true that all men are mortal, and it's true that Aristotle is a man, then it's for certain that Aristotle is mortal. That's a different type of logic. That's deductive. We're going from general to specific. Now, again, complicated stuff, but me and Joe were talking about it casually, and it started like a fire, But some people say it's one of the best ever, the best podcast ever. So I don't know. I get emails and messages about it all the time till today. Like people want to talk about it.
And you only go live. Maybe you go live once a week, right, on YouTube?
Yeah, I go live once a week. We talk about fighting, MMA, fitness, and all that. Then I open it up to ask me anything, and usually I get a lot of philosophical questions and stuff like that.
Philosophy is that was my favorite. I thought school was always a scam, but that was my favorite subject. Was especially it's good that you want to talk about determinism next time, because that helped me search and start looking for Islam and looking for the truth. Was the class about free will and determinism?
Yeah, I think determinism is very central to Islam. Very central. So central that I don't think you could truly understand Islam without determinism. Determinism is also a very powerful proof for God. Very powerful. When I talk about determinism with atheists, they have no reply. I ask them things that they cannot reply to. They cannot reply to this. They have no answer. And I tell them, look, it has to be, the first action has to be God. It can't be nature, blind forces. It cannot be. So one day we'll do a special episode on this. It's a very deep thought. It's a very deep thought. But I'm telling you, every atheist I took them by the hand and I held them down this journey. None of them ever. They all like they were like mute, like they get speechless. They can't compute. They just like go quiet. They have a look on their face and like, I don't know how to answer that. Determinism is a massive proof for God. Massive.
We want to do same time next week on Wednesday, 9 p.m.?
Next week might be a little short notice. Maybe like in December we can do, because December is more quiet for me.
Okay.
How's December for you? Are you traveling and stuff?
I never know. I'm a very last minute type of person.
I
still want to go to Montreal. Yeah, I know. I go very on the fly. But we could, in December, sure, inshallah.
Inshallah, December. Let's do December, because December is a much quieter time for me. And then January is out of control, crazy. And but we'll definitely touch base, man. Now that we have each other's numbers and stuff, we can.
You're a hard man to reach. Sometimes like
I know, man.
Slow to respond to texts.
No, I know. You know why? Because I get so many messages in a day. It's crazy. So I dread, I have anxiety looking at my phone because there's so many messages I have to reply to, and I'm on the mats 3 times a day. So I'm like so busy on the mats. Then I look at my phone, more messages. It's just like it's crazy. But don't worry, we'll stay in touch, inshallah, and we're gonna do it again. And we'll touch on determinism. Determinism, we should do a whole episode on just what is determinism. Try to wrap our minds around it. It's a very, very profound topic.
I was going to ask you more about MMA, but I guess we'll save it for the next time. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure, brother.
Big shout out to you, man. I appreciate it so much. Walaikum salam.